Well, first of
I
all,
see.
we've got to
If we're done with this, like the Second Amendment, I would like to ask you about your taxes
yes,
plan.
yeah. So my tax system, I basically start where Henry George leaves off, and I say that we should have taxes based on the thing that the contemporary Georgist
You're
tax
cutting
models
out.
on. The difference is that oh, I'm sorry. Uh,
Good
I
now, I think.
basically I basically say the same things that the contemporary Georges say about tax codes, which is that the electromagnetic spectrum and that space, or specifically the electromagnetic spectrum, water, and naturally occurring resources, and also intellectual property associated with production of raw materials and manufacturing. Those are the things that should be taxed, and only those things, except for Pagovian taxes, which should be used very sparingly and only for uh, transitionary political times. So a Pagovian tax is basically when you tax something that society doesn't like cigarette smoking. They're just going to remember when they boosted the taxes on cigarettes? That's a Pagovian tax. So Pagovian taxes can be useful as a temporary solution to certain political problems, but in general are an undesirable form of tax. The only truly appropriate, sustainable form of tax that there is to tax income derived from private use of naturally occurring wealth. But
For example,
so, like right now, the minerals in the United States, for example, the Haynesville Shale, that
hmm
is privately owned. The wealth generated from it is privately held. The technology to produce that oil and gas energy is private property, and the vast majority of the people are forced to pay retail prices for this naturally occurring commodity that the person who sold it to him has no legitimate claim to propriety on. So, like, no one can own the earth. Okay, owning land in this sense is a asinine notion, really, and is completely impractical. And as long as we try to hold up this absolutist notion of private property of land and naturally occurring resources, it damns us to political primitivism. We will never achieve a, a great level of society with these kind of asinine behaviors. And there's no good reason to try to. It's really just the hubris and ego of the individual that resist those ideas. Uh,
so you're kind of saying private property should be abolished in terms of land.
yeah, so private ownership of land is equally as asinine as the idea of private ownership of air.
Oh, I see what I mean. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like you under your system though, you would still technically have ownership though, as long as you could pay the tax,
Yeah,
right?
it would be called a right of domicile, but yes, it's in practice exactly the same thing as private property. In fact, it might even be more robust than our current system because of eminent domain. That's not a thing in my system. Uh, Also, the
Wait, eminent domain would not be a thing in your system.
no.
Ooh.
So in my system, which bear in mind, my legal system doesn't categorically reject clanism, which was the legalistic norm for thousands of years until maybe the last 200 years when legalism finally prevailed over clan law, like
What's
tribal
clan
law.
law?
I see.
Could you give us the TDLR of what that is?
Like family feud, these kinds of things. That was law before what we currently understand as law was finally technologically capable of governing the people. Because think about it, like 800 years ago, for example, any king only has word of mouth. Like there's no telephones. If he wants to send a message to one of his governors, he has to tell a courier who will hop on a horse and then ride it for weeks to get there to go tell that person in person. Well, that's not much of a surveillance state compared to the NSA's current toys. You see what I'm saying? So the ability to enforce laws directly corresponds with the acceptance of law and order based on these legalistic institutions. Whereas in the absence of those institutions, there is a default system for law and order, which is the order of clans and tribes, which, like I say, has prevailed among the human race for literally millions of years, and in less than 200 or 300 years ago, finally took a non-dominant role. But in my system, I don't consider my legal codes to be in a dispute with the tribal system. I harness the good parts of the tribal system and fuse it with the good parts of the non-tribal system because, again, my whole system is designed around discarding what doesn't work, keeping what does work, and then using design science to put it together in the most efficient way. But the pillars, okay, that are different in my system, like I don't know if y'all were here, but the fundamentals of any state are the money, the tax code, the military, and the courts, which you could extend the courts to the police plus the courts. The police are really just marshals of the court. But to have a state, you have to define a border, defend that border, establish law and order within that border. You have to fund the military and the police and the courts with taxes, and you have to pay that taxes in money. So that's why those are the fundamentals. Everything else is a ancillary accessory to that core, but that core of things is what makes a state a state. Without that, you don't have a state. Sovereignty is derived from those things being intact and working well for the people that they ostensibly should work well for. Well, we don't have that now. Every one of those things is fucked up. The military is fucked up, tax code's fucked up, money's fucked up, law and order's fucked up. So if we approach social issues like anything, fucking $15 an hour minimum wage, whatever it is, anything that we try to approach is going to either fail outright or be a piece of shit version of the dream that everyone had. And the reason is because you can't build a castle on a foundation of sand. We have a shitty foundation, and there's no small measure that's going to change those things. We have to demand fundamental change on those core pillars of our state, or else we will not have a sovereign state. We do not have a sovereign state now. Other countries' intelligence services are literally paid to spy on Americans. We're in a bad
That's true.
situation. We have to get our sovereignty back. We have to redeem the spirit of our country. We have to understand what society is and that a state and governance and society are all different things. Like monarchies, that's a more sophisticated, more robust form of government. It's not just about express powers of a state. A state is just a set of institutions like a bunch of private businesses or something. Society is something more than that. It is a matter of art. It is a matter of language, of philosophy. It's a delicate thing that's difficult to understand and frankly cannot be understood in this kind of rigid, choppy kind of analytical
You cut out.
understand these things. And there's a hello.
You cut out again.
Hey, I'm sorry.
Okay, you're
Yeah, my
back.
reception is a piece of shit. But
Which service do you have?
it's a AT&T in Louisiana. It's just garbage.
That's weird because AT&T is likely gonna have the best coverage of them all.
My house has always been.
Maybe they haven't gotten the area as well.
It might be. I'm not a IT guy. It might be something about my router. I'm not sure exactly. But anyway,
Wait,
so
are you using Wi-Fi or
Wi-Fi.
cellular? So you need to get a better router then.
yeah, that's probably what it is. But yeah, society is a bigger, deeper, more delicate, far more important concept than a state. In America, our national identity is the identity of our state, not of our society. Okay. So that means that our society and all the important things that need to be tended are not being tended because we don't conceive those as things that need to be tended. Well, that's a big, big vulnerability that has been exploited to our detriment for decades. And It's like lots of people think that there's some big communist conspiracy theory. Well, it's like, well, how would it even be possible for them to do that if our sovereignty wasn't fundamentally compromised to begin with? Uh, we're in a bad situation, and that said, the angry men in America are in a position to easily solve this problem. We don't even have to tear shit up. We don't have to destroy our own country or anything like that. We simply have to rattle our sabers, flex our muscles, beat our chest. It's like, hey, look, do conservatives agree with everything that BLM and Antifa say? Of course not. But are we going to let that kerfuffle be so important that we're going to sit there and let AOC turn all of our sons into trannies? Well, absolutely fucking not. Okay. So
I
the
don't
real
know what your obsession with like transsexual people is.
No,
You've mentioned that a bunch
hold
of
on.
times.
I don't want to get I don't want to get into. I want to hear him continue. I don't want to get off on this stuff. This
Thank you,
topic.
Master. Man, I wish you would have been here earlier, dude. No, but so prevailing winds. Like the Democrats have a big machine. They have a big, powerful machine, and they have a way of recruiting that is self-sustaining. How did they do that? By lying to women, of course. Okay. The Democrats have been very cleverly lying to little girls from a very young age, starting at literally their childhood storybooks. Okay. And brainwashing them, and of course men too. But for reasons I'll explain later, it's more important to manipulate women, and the Democrats have figured this out. So any government that's in power in any state has the potential for people to threaten their power from outside of the state. For example, like, Armenia's power is threatened by Turkey. Okay. But then there's also rebellious young men in Armenia who could, if they wanted to, become the dominant power because, there's only so many men with guns who are currently in power, and if the young people get guns and outnumber them, well, next thing you know, they're in power. So it's inherent attribute.
Oh,
The disenfranchised males. Hello?
all right, we can hear you now.
Hey.
So it's a inherent attribute of every single state's behavior. Country is what I mean by state. What I mean is government. The government of a country. Every state must, without exception, every single state in history, now and forever, without exception, must have a policy on preventing the disenfranchised males of their own population from taking over their power and from rising up. Okay? Every state has a way of doing this. The most ubiquitous and successful way of doing this is called divide and rule. That is exactly what is happening with our political understanding. We're taught the communists are terrible, Antifa's terrible, BLM's terrible. Well, all that is divide and rule. What we're actually saying is, I'm a big dummy and I'm going to fall right into the trap of divide and rule without even trying to outsmart the people who are trying to outsmart me. Okay? Well, you get what you pay for. That is stupidity and it's totally wrong. The only way to manifest the power from the bottom up is to, first of all, acknowledge the power that we do have. Second of all, acknowledge the weaknesses of the people whose power we're trying to rival. And then to basically beat our chest until they step in line. Am I saying that we should take over the government? No. I'm saying we have so many numbers that if we just beat our chest, that everyone would just scamper into order and do what we want them to do. The men in America who are pissed off with how things are going are literally more powerful than any other group of people on Earth. Nothing can stop these men. Okay, except divide and rule. And it is working like a charm right now.
Jeez, way too effective.
It's sad, man. But,
I sent you something in voice chat text.
You said you sent me a private message?
No, I sent you a link in voice chat text.
Oh, okay. I see it. Oh, okay, for a router. Thank you. I do need to upgrade that soon. Sorry about my
Okay.
reception.
I recommend you the best ones you can get right now. That's a reasonable price.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. I probably will go out and buy it. But yeah, man, I'm not trying to say a bunch of conspiracy theories. I'm not trying to come in here and rag on.
Here's the thing, you
I
need
want
a lot
conservatives
of
to
like
win on
strong.
the things that they deserve to win on. It's just that that's only a fraction of the things that they think they're right about. If they would just man up and accept that they were wrong about a few things and set those things down, then they can win. They can get the things that are really important to them. They can be successful in those things, and they can save our country in the process.
What do you think conservatives are wrong about?
First of all, they're wrong about their vitriol against specifically the non-Democrat left. Okay? So, without getting into the weeds, I'm going to try to not get into the weeds, I say. Let's do a quick survey of what the left even is. Okay? So, by volume, you have a large number of liberal progressives. It's an insult to the rest of the left to call them the left. Okay? But we're in America, and America calls them the left, so I'm not going to argue with that. But there is not left as you can be while still being considered left by anybody. The liberal progressives are everyone's enemy. They hate the real socialists. They hate the real communists. The Cold War was literally the liberal progressives' war against the communists and the socialists. That's what the whole Cold War even was. Okay. So the real left has way more sensible views than the reactionary liberal progressives who, let's be serious, who are these liberal progressives? They're people who grew up in the suburbs of major cities. These are people who are the most removed from human nature, who have the least good perspective on how the world works, who are raised in families that almost exclusively spoil them and coddle their emotions and stuff. Okay? These are sheltered kids. All right? They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They are only even in the Democratic Party because they see ugly, ugly things in the Republican Party and have a lizard brain reaction to that and just clamor to the group of people who claims to oppose it. For example, when the Republicans are like, oh, fuck poor people. We're not going to help poor people. Them motherfuckers need to work. Well, it's like, look,
Lizard brain, that was funny.
it's just disgusting. Like when these conservatives talk about their anti-poor rhetoric, it's just a humiliating indignity that an adult would even say
Some
that shit.
people are just hating because other people are hating. They don't bother to think about
Exactly.
it. I think
It's a bunch of dogs running up and down a fence.
What percentage of like total voters do you think that's happening to?
Probably about 70%.
And
So also that happens to be about the same number as people who subscribe to what they call primacy bias, which is a cognitive bias that's extremely common. That's where, like, say you're driving down the street and you're actually wrong and somebody is in your way and you honk at them and you're like, get out of my way, you idiot. But actually you're the one who was wrong.
I see. That's weird. But like,
Right,
I had a
because-
major political turn.
Huh.
Like when I was young, I supported the Obama, supported Hillary, then Trump. Right, I supported Trump. I think 2 months before the election.
Oh, wow.
Before the 2016 election, my bad.
Right.
Then it was doing okay. Then I was like really supporting Trump in like 2018 and early 19.
Mm-hmm.
And the early 2020s, like, yeah, my support for him started to diminish and
Yeah.
started accepting libertarianism.
Exactly. Trump ruined his own machine in his last year. Like his first 3 years of presidency really weren't bad, but 2020 was a total train wreck.
Yeah, if like that pretty much caused his demise along with a few others.
Well, he handed it to the Democrats. Like he fucked up so bad that the Democrats won, and the Republicans howl with discontent when you say that. But it's like, look,
He was fighting against themselves.
yeah, exactly. Well, the Democrats are clever, and that's one thing that the conservatives like to pretend isn't true, but it is. The Democrats know that a lot of conservatives in the South are racist, and they know that in an election year, all they have to do is pull some fucking stunt, and they can trick the conservatives into reminding everybody how racist they are. And the Republicans are too stupid to do anything except fall for it hook, line, and sinker. Like,
The only thing I see the Republicans do is like just say, "Oh my God, this is not cool. We should do something else," and they never bother doing it. Like I hate to generalize, but like that's the overall vibe I'm getting from the party. It needs a major reform or facelift.
Well, I agree, and it's the only way that that can happen is in these kinds of conversations. Like we're well outside of the bailiwick of typical conservative talking. They don't have conversations like this. They get around and they're like, yeah, we need to just bomb the shit out of Iran. These poor people need to get a job." It's like, look, all you're doing is driving people into the arms of the Democratic Party, and nothing else. And I hate seeing it. I hate seeing it.
Recently, I started looking at life in a three-phase way. In phase one, your goal is to learn and get wisdom from people who are later on life. In phase three, in phase two, your goal is to lead. In phase three, your goal is to pass down the wisdom to the phase one people so they can be better leaders when they're leading.
That's an interesting way of looking at it.
Currently, all the politicians and almost about 90% of the politicians are in way late phase three.
Mm-hmm.
They shouldn't be leading. They should have been passed down the wisdom to the new generation and let them lead.
Well, we have a cult of ideology at like Hitler never even aspired to, for instance, kill 20% of the Earth's population. Stalin didn't either. Like, there's literally no villain from history who has aspired to anything as sinister and hideous as the casual talking points in America that conservatives in America just rattle off like it's something other than a ridiculous, stupid idea. Oh, we just need to bomb the Middle East back into glass. Bomb them into the Stone Age. That's how we can handle all this shit. Like, you idiot. Don't you realize that that's the single most evil thing that anyone has ever suggested in politics? Literally, not even Genghis Khan wanted something worse than that.
That's a caricature of conservative positions. That's I
I've heard
don't
it a
think you'll
million
find.
times.
Well,
like, they don't really think that, of course, but they also can't find Iraq on a map.
That's true. People don't even know where Iran is.
They have no clue what any of this shit is. That they get their information from TV. How many times do you think the media has told us the truth in the last 50 years?
Oh, another thing I saw the other day.
Exactly.
Another thing I saw the other day was like people trying to look for North Korea and they couldn't find it. And they said it was a flat map, so it showed the entire world. So someone said it is all the way from there to here. How can they reach all the way from there to here?
They can't. Literally, even with the only missile that they have that might be able to hit part of America, would have to fly through Russian airspace to do it. Now, how do you think Vladimir Putin would appreciate Kim Jong-un shooting a missile through his airspace?
No, I don't think a missile may have. Actually, yeah, never mind. It does. It will slightly into the Russian airspace.
North Korea is utterly not a threat to the United States. In fact, if you divided the United States' military budget by the North Korean military budget, you know what the number would be?
I'm curious.
1,000.
What do you mean 1,000?
Like, if you multiplied the North Korean military budget by 1,000, that would be approximately the United States military budget.
Oh, 1,000 is as much as North Korea. Right. I thought it was going to be $1,000. I was so lost for a second.
But yeah, so like this idea.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Texas. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, how big is their military budget?
It's about $750 million.
No, it's not.
Let's see.
I'm side note. I'm curious, Bird. Would schools be privatized in your perfect thing?
That's a good question. So no, they would not. School in my system would largely look like scenario where schools are parks.
North Korean.
Hey, hold on. You're cutting out hard, Bird. You're cutting out real hard.
Okay, so picture a scenario where everybody who goes to school has a homeschool curriculum that they choose with their parents and family and whatever. So out of all the different curriculums or whatever that they go to choose from, they get to pick, and then everybody still goes to the same physical location to learn, but they're not divided into age-based classes or groups. Uh, they're trained as groups, not as individuals. Third of their education is vocational. A third is self-maintenance and self-reliance, and a third is scholastic or intellectual development, should I say? And by the time they graduate, talking about like pre-college, pre-higher education, they will have gone to every park in their town and region, to the power plant, to the water treatment plant, to the downtown police station, city hall, all these things. They will have gotten a tour of the place that they live. They will have been led through every single process from voting to writing bills and everything, every act that they should know as an adult. They will be trained to do in school, including grow their own vegetables, et cetera, et cetera. So in my system, education is far more practical and less expensive. So funding school is a fraction, just maybe a 20th the cost. The freedom of education of the individual students is far, far higher. The burden on the parents is far, far less. And instead of wasting the efforts of children, we actually use their labor. I know that's a crazy thought, but it's how it's always worked.
So basically, teach kids by actually doing the jobs that they will be doing.
Yeah, and
Basically,
literally
teach them by letting them do every job if they want to do it. Basically,
yeah, exactly. Like you get, and also people's parents and stuff. So the class visits, everybody's parents work and stuff like that. We go and see what the adults do when they're at work every day. We get to see how the sausage is made in every place of business. And in that process, we get to kind of see what we like, what jobs we want to go into. And the entirety of primary education is centered around that. So you actually do know what you want to be when you grow up.
If I wanted to design an education system, I would make it up to grade 10, is to get all the basics done, high school done.
Mm-hmm.
Above that, you will go for 2 years school or vocational training before you go to university. Like in those 2 years of training, you can be able to get a really good paying job.
See, I don't think that jobs should be dependent on education.
You don't think what?
System that your
You cut out
education
again.
that's far and beyond. Hold on, am I back?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So if we have a economic situation where the only people who are able to get into good jobs, I'm talking about the kind of jobs that enable society to happen, where the only people who can get into those jobs are people who have passed through school, that's a negative situation. We shouldn't be having an economic system or a societal system that's so complicated that only highly educated people can do it. There's no need for that level of complication, and because there are practical reasons why that isn't a good idea, it isn't a good idea. The only reason we accept that now is because we don't understand. Oh, god damn it. One of the trolls is back in here. All right. So we've heard enough about my ideas. Now there are trolls here who want to talk about ridiculous nonsense, probably insulting me. So y'all can just have their conversation. Seven, I'm sending you a friend request. If you want to pick up this conversation when there aren't a bunch of pencil dick trolls in here, I'll be happy to.
Hey, I want to pick it up. Can I get a friend request?
I just sent you one.
Wow, thank you.
Oh, well, I'll be getting off for the night. It's 1:16 a.m. right now. I gotta wake up early
Well,
tomorrow. Good talk, everyone, and good night.
Nice meeting you, sir.
Nice to meet you,
See
sir.
ya.
So, Nexus Coin and Genase. Look, man, I don't want to argue with y'all. When I have these conversations, I understand that I'm saying things that are far removed from the way that people currently understand things. But if you're saying that I'm just so stupid that my IQ is low, it just isn't. I have a very high IQ. And if you're saying that I'm just a quack idiot, well, that's also not true. I spend a great deal of time and effort learning about these things in an honest effort to understand them so that I can hopefully do something to help the world one day. I'm trying to be a politician. I'm trying to learn how to do it without being an ass kisser or a kiss ass pander bear like these disgusting politicians we have now who are repulsive, in my opinion. And that's a hard thing to try to do. When you try to talk to people about ideas that they're not used to being talked about, they usually don't like it. But it's the only way to actually move forward in our political situation. And I would like to be able to come onto these kinds of servers and talk to people in a respectful way without being insulted offhand and dismissed. That's not really fair to the amount of hard work that I have in fact put in when no one was looking, and the innocent good intentions that I do have in these conversations. So, in the future, I promise I'll be respectful to you if you are to me.
No, obviously. But if you want people to come around to your point of view, then shouldn't you make an effort to convince them of your point of view and not just say, this is my point of view, follow me or do not?
I do agree with that. However, with caveats, there is a number of times where that just doesn't practically work, and this isn't the first time I've attempted to have these conversations. And I go and I talk to the left too, and they do exactly the same thing. And probably a small percentage of them realize that I'm here actually to have an interesting conversation. It's not exactly easy, it's not exactly common, but I am not here to try to insult people or to win any conversations. I honestly just want to talk about the material because I'm interested in it.
You said your IQ is very high. May I ask what your IQ is?
It's in the high 130s or low 140s. I haven't had a proctored exam, but through knowing a group of people, my nerd friends who have had the proctored exams, I've been able to basically have a number of highly intelligent conversations with people who do know their number. And I've talked to a couple of guys who are clearly a little smarter than me, a couple of guys who are clearly a little dumber than me, who all have had proctored exams. So I just split the difference between those three individuals and placed myself somewhere around 135, 140, 145. I would be surprised if it was actually over 145. But that's really not the key to my ideas. It isn't cerebral thinking power or computational power that has led me to these things. I've had to dig into perspective itself and the fallacies associated with perspective and language, because I actually didn't start out trying to learn about politics. I was trying to learn about engineering and the design associated with, like, the philosophical decisions associated with design. So I
So
was
I
like,
suppose you have a degree in political science.
oh no, of course not. Like, if you say I went to go get a degree in political science from like Louisiana State University or something, it would be basically a waste of 4 years.
So you have a degree in philosophy.
I don't have a degree in anything. I got kicked out of school a long time ago for actually inquiring and rejecting dogma. And if there was a school that I could go to that was intellectually free, honest college, that, like, what we think college actually is, but in fact it is not, I would make haste to join it. But what we have in what we call college is in fact a vocational school that attempts to wear the hat of a scholarly institution and try to play both of those cards. It's a vocational school, and that the vocational aspects of what you need to know about political science are totally removed from what you need to understand political science. Like,
So you obviously you have shown us that you already understand political science. Don't you think going to university and getting a degree in actual political science would help you use vocabulary that other
yeah,
people
I would
will
I would probably
understand?
more likely.
Yeah,
I would
don't you think
probably
you could? Don't you think you could convince other people better if you went and got a degree,
probably
or
so. Probably so.
that it wouldn't be a waste of 4 years, right?
Well, as far as my learning, it would slow down my learning. I would have to stop learning at the rate that I do to start
How do you find
cooperating with their
time?
curriculum.
How do you find time for learning with your profession?
Uh,
Oh,
I basically I don't watch TV, so whenever I'm not at work, I'm learning. I learn recreationally.
what's your sources that you learn from?
It depends on what I'm trying to learn. Like, one thing that I do is I watch history as it happens. Uh, so like I'll watch current events, but the way that I watch current events is different from the way that a lot of people do. So, for example, I talked earlier about there's trouble a brewing in Lebanon. Well, if I read uh, Al Jazeera, they're going to have a little bit different story than what France 24 is going to say about the same thing, because France has different interests in that conflict than Qatar does. Uh, so, reading historians from different cultures who opine about different historical happenings, like, for example, the American Revolution. In America, we just readily accept that the American Revolution was a revolution just like the French or Russian revolutions, and that all of these things, but that is far, far from how the rest of the world understands it. In fact, several other countries don't even call the American Revolution a revolution at all. They call it a civil war. They call it the Second Anglo Saxon Civil War. And the first time I heard a French historian use that term, I was like, whoa, that sure is a weird thing to call the American Revolution. Like, that's a common thing. The Spanish narrative of American history is unfamiliar to Americans. The French, Russian, Japanese narratives of American history are all very, 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 very different from American history as we've learned it in America. Even the British story of American history is very different from the American story. Well, how can these contrasts exist unless there's something to it? Obviously, there's something going on here with these historians talking about the same historical process in highly different terms.
But
Well,
if you said that proof doesn't matter, so if proof
proof does
if
matter. I, I, I was
you said
just frustrated earlier because
you said it was a beginner mistake to demand
it
proof.
is. Yes, that's really what I was objecting to, was the impulsivity with which I felt like the demands for proof were being issued. Uh, in, for
Well,
instance,
you have to
Chinese
see that from
culture.
a you have to see that yeah. Well, that's why you have to see it from a perspective of somebody you're trying to convince essentially. So you're trying to free us from our systematic and indoctrination, and for us, we have heard our entire life that whatever let's say for our entire life the color green we would have been called blue for us,
Mm-hmm,
right? And you would know that that is the color blue, and
mm-hmm,
then you would come to us and say, look at that, it is actually called blue and you're being indoctrinated. And
mm-hmm,
now a person like us would say, no, you're fucking retard. This is obviously green. I know it's green. I've been told all my
mm-hmm,
life it's green. I've been shown it's green. Why would it be blue? But if you can produce, let's say, documents from an experiment that is being conducted on us, that is for some reason making us believe that the color blue is green, then we would be more inclined or even convinced
mm-hmm.
by to believe you. And you made no effort into that direction at all.
Yeah, that's by design. That is a way to end up with conclusions that are understood out of context and ultimately isn't helping the person. So they are correct that they want to know, and they are asking for what it would take for them to arrive at the correct conclusion. They just think that that looks different from what it really is. They think that if they ask me for proof and I do what you say, I give them some document to read or something, and they accept that, well, they just learned wrong. They just took away the wrong message and they still don't understand the actual point. So at that point, I have to make a decision to either accept that the person who just asked me this question walked away with the wrong point and thought they had the right point, and I know that and they don't, or I have the opportunity to labor with them and to try to appeal to them to understand it outside of the way that they're trying to, and they either will or they won't. So, since I want people to actually understand, I try to have the difficult conversation and explain it in a way that will lead to a meaningful understanding of it. And maybe 60% of the time they buck and don't let me do that. But I will say that 40% of the time is absolutely worth it. Because if you try to just do it the way you're talking about, the percentage of people who you talk to who actually do walk away with a meaningful conclusion will be fewer than 40%. It'll probably be more like 10% if you're lucky. So, like, another thing, people will take issue with the casual way that I approach talking about this stuff. And
Do
there's
you
also.
But do you understand that you using a different definition for a word that is widely accepted? So I think what you're trying to say in our previous conversation was
Mhm.
that there is that there's a dangerous subculture of fascists
Mhm.
that have soft powers. And you use the word Nazis, which the word Nazi says is a subgroup of fascists with a very specific definition. Now, if you would have just used the word fascists, if you just use the common term for a certain group of people you're trying to describe, then I would say 80% of the chat would have been more inclined to
That's
listen to.
probably true.
But instead you double down on your position every time, and every time, like your if you had all the problems that arose from our line of questioning, right? So what we try to do, obviously, is we try to find flaws in your hypothesis, and we did that by asking a question, which you would answer by introducing another thesis, which we would then again
Right.
try to
But
destroy
see,
with a line of questioning. But
there's a
if you
reductionist
just
problem there.
if you had just used the word fascists instead of national socialists, the people would have been more inclined, and we could have actually had the discussion you wanted to have,
Well, that's
and not
probably true.
and not a discussion about semantics.
From my perspective, of course, you got to remember I spend most of my time talking to people who are not conservatives. So I generally don't consider fascism or the word fascism to be any more correctly understood than, for instance, the word socialist or capitalist or any of these other ist words that nobody actually understands.
I
And
am a law professional and I understand them quite well.
okay, well, you're in that case, I concede you're probably right. If I probably should have used the word fascist, and that probably would have led to a lot less bullshit. So you are right about that. But the reason that I chose Nazis, in addition to the fact that I don't think fascism is a cleanly defined word, ostensibly, is that the emphasis on Malthusian sketches in fascism seems to be less prominent than in specifically the Nazi branch, whereas generally fascism seems to be more associated with a forceful approach to politics. Like, it's just kind of a, I guess they have a more state-centric than society-centric scope of how it all works. But they are definitely close cousins, and maybe that's not even a meaningful differentiation in the context.
Maybe both Nazism and fascism aren't the right words. Maybe what you're trying to describe is some sort of shadow organization, which I, by the way, still believe is wrong, but I would be willing to discuss that with you in a more serious manner.
Okay. Yeah, by the way, how do I pronounce your name? By the way, the Genosi.
It's Gnossi. It's something common.
Okay. I'm sorry. What were you saying now?
If you, what you're maybe trying to do is not use fascist or Nazist, because those terms have a very clear prerequisite in the minds of most people. And when you're trying to introduce a new political idea, which you clearly have, which might or might not be wrong, then you maybe should use a description of that political idea, which in your case would be something like a shadow organization, or that's at least what I heard from how you were describing it. and that would make them more perceptive to it because they have a preset idea for what a Nazi is, and then if your description of a Nazi doesn't match that, they're going to say you're an idiot, you're a retard, and you're wrong. And when you say it's a shadow government, then they are more inclined to say, okay, I still believe you're wrong, but let's talk about it.
Well,
and then you have a better chance of convincing them.
I mean, that's true. But like, okay, so even the fact that we're having this conversation should be a pretty good clue that talking about these things in general is difficult because people's understanding of these things is highly predicated on their linguistic definitions of the terms that they're using, not necessarily a framework of analysis of the things being described.
And yeah, but you have to understand language to be able to have a meaningful conversation with anybody about anything.
Well, especially anything as complicated as politics, which uses the limitations of language punitively as part of a practical.
So you have to be extremely precise with what you mean, and you just cannot mix definitions.
And I struggle with that. I want to agree with that, but at the same time, I can also.
Yeah, okay. But as soon as you're making one of those semantic mistakes,
I don't think it's a mistake. Is my point. Like I want to agree, but I'm at about maybe 45% agreement.
It's a semantic mistake.
I don't think it's actually a mistake because semantics is ultimately part of semiotics, and I've conditioned my semantics to be conducive with logic and semiotics and to break with linguistic expectations, which in my opinion are arbitrary. So the rules that underpin literary standard English are not designed to be conducive to the laws of logic or of philosophizing. Or I guess that really is the same thing as logic. But English is an extremely problematic language for analysis.
That is... Yeah, Common English is an extremely problematic language for analysis.
Even advanced English in general is a poor language.
That is untrue. It is a very useful language.
I strongly disagree. I think English is a cumbersome, imprecise bear of a language, and doesn't even deserve to sit in the same seat as fine languages like Greek or Sanskrit, or even Latin is a whole different animal compared to English.
Well, would you rather converse in Latin?
Impossible. We don't know how it's pronounced. But I can read Latin. I had Latin for 6 years, and I can tell you that English is much more precise, seeing that in Latin, the same word can be an adjective or a substantive, and the only way we have to... Because Latin is not meant to be a written language. It's meant to be... It is not at all a good thing. It's not at all a good thing. Because Latin is not meant to be written down, it's meant to be spoken, and we do not know how to speak it, and we know that different words with the same spelling and similar meanings have similar interpretations based on the pronunciation.
Do you know who Derrida or Wittgenstein is? Wittgenstein?
Wittgenstein, no, please enlighten me.
All of these guys, he was a very important 20th century philosopher who is largely associated with philosophy of language, to a lesser extent, but still notable philosophy of mathematics. Russell is more known for philosophy of mathematics, but still also dabbled in philosophy of language. But also Leibniz, Derrida, especially Derrida, had a very interesting way of talking. Whatever, however you say it. Okay. So these people all had a similar view of how language works that seems less precise, but in fact is more precise in that it's elegant, not comprehensive. So whereas the mode of precision that you're talking about that English is useful for is intermediate level of precision, but at the truly advanced levels of precision, you have to be able to implicitly suggest both perspective orientation and scale of observation. And that's a two-way street. So when a person makes a generalization, like for instance, when I say, fat feminists don't make men sandwiches, Okay, that could be inferred in several different specific different ways. So that could be me saying all fat feminists never ever make any men a sandwich ever ever. So there has never been one time where a fat feminist has made one man a sandwich. So that's one of the things that I could be inferring. Another one I could be saying is that the majority of fat feminists, the majority of time, don't make men sandwiches. Well,
Well,
those
there's
are
a very easy
logically
solution to
speaking
that.
two different things.
Yeah,
Okay.
and there's a very easy solution to that, because if you formalize a language, you have just
But-
expressed both.
Well, hold on. So
Perfect way to
here is the solution. The listener can just automatically know that whenever a person says something like that they're only talking about the instances where it is true, and they're not talking about the instances where it's not true. That way, neither of the people in the conversation have to limit themselves to this
Yes, but
litigious meta language.
that doesn't suffice for formal interpretation, which
Like that.
is a cornerstone of philosophy after Socrates. But this conversation has been going on for too long. It's been less toxic now than it was before, but I'm gonna have to know about you. But it was nice talking to you.
For sure. So is that dude from like England or what?
Germany sounds like.
Yeah, he sounded German to me.
Well, okay, so I know now I probably sound like a crazy ass because I'm insisting on what that guy calls unprecise language, but it actually is quite precise. There's just a level of nuance that he's not picking up on because he doesn't know how to talk that way. Neither do most English speakers, but there are a lot of linguists and philosophers of language who are the ones who came up with what I said. It's not my idea. I'm not sitting here rebelling against precise language. What I am saying is that precise language is only useful in situations where it is useful, and the vast majority of the times it is not useful. Elegant, casual language is much, much more useful much more of the time than precise language. Precise language comes out when you're trying to, like, write a document or do work for money or write something definitive or do work instead of just a casual conversation.
So I stumbled in on this conversation a little bit late. What was it? What was the topic of the conversation?
Well, we've talked about all kinds of stuff. Generally, the conversation has been about political realism as opposed to popular politics, and the fact that most people understand politics through the lens of popular politics and not real politics, and they're oblivious to the true underpinning cogs and machines of real political science. Most people are oblivious to the way that actual politics works. And one of the ways that they're oblivious is by having a poor command of political language. They're limited by what they can describe with words and don't understand that there's such thing beyond that. There's still ideas that can't be accounted for with the limitations of words.
Interesting.
There could be anything that can't be talked about with words. And so you came in
Something that
when
I'm
we were
not
talking
smart
about the
enough to
language.
discuss about.
It's really not that complicated, man. But think about it like this. Okay, so there's the laws of physics, right? And then there's the laws of language. Those aren't the same laws. So when we start talking about things, those things are subject to the laws of physics, not language. Okay, so when we try to superimpose the laws of language onto things, that's a fallacy. It doesn't work like that. Now, there might be a popular majority of the people who are committing that fallacy, but it doesn't make it not a fallacy.
All right.
So if what I was
language
saying,
is all we have, like until telepathic communication becomes a thing. I mean, it's the best we've got, so we have to work within the language.
yeah, exactly, and that's what I'm doing. So what I'm doing is using language in a way that does enable you to talk about things that are beyond the limitations of language. You just have to distort the language a little bit to be able to talk about those things. And then when people are used to clean, tidy language that doesn't break the rules, they see that you're breaking the rules consistently. They're like, "Oh, you don't know how to talk." but really they don't know how to talk without squeaky clean grammar and consistent rules and stuff like that. But the natural universe is just not something that we can describe in our relatively primitive language.
No, but we can avoid getting into these meta arguments precise about what we're talking about, meaning
Yeah, that's what
exactly
gets
what
me.
you say and saying exactly what you mean.
I don't like. I don't know the. I mean, it's not just you because obviously, I think people around you have been bringing up more than you have, but the meta arguments kind of. I don't know. I feel like I've just been hearing them a lot lately, and they've been getting old.
Okay, so here's a question to all y'all. When was the last time that you talked to a person about politics that did have not just a few ideas that were unorthodox, but a complete whole perspective from which they can criticize entire other ideologies without violating the continuity of logic of their own ideas? When was the last time you had a conversation with a person like that?
A long time ago.
Right. So I don't understand why it's such an unwelcome thing. Like if I had a chance to talk to a person like that, even if they so I don't know what part of the country y'all are from, but here in Louisiana, there's a bunch of people. Man, they just be talking like this. They don't know how to talk. They say this, they say that, blah 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 blah. Everything they say is totally folk and far from professional or anything like that. But does that mean those people are incapable of conceiving advanced topics? No. When they talk about them like a person who talks like that. Okay, so if I met a person who has some original ideas to talk about, I don't give a fuck how they talk. They might talk like a complete weirdo. And I'm going to do extra hard work to understand what they're saying. If I don't understand it, I'm going to ask questions until I understand it. If it's very complicated, I'll take fucking notes.
Well,
If it
that's.
requires me.
I mean, I completely agree. I don't know why they were getting so hung up on the term Nazi. Like,
They
I
just wanted
think,
to beat me in an argument. They were sick
yeah,
of me talking and wanted to Ben
it
Shapiro me.
seems like you could have been. There should have been a clear implication of what you were getting at there.
Yeah, I wasn't even making some grand point. It's just like, hello, there's some people who are quasi Nazis and they're out there doing quasi Nazi shit. It's a thing. So,
Well, I think we were
That's
disagreeing with the underlying point, to be clear, which was, and I don't think you said there are some Nazis out there. I think my understanding of what you said was that there is a substantial powerful group of Nazis growing in Europe, and
I wouldn't
that's
say.
where the conversation got
Okay.
derailed because we were asking you for
But
evidence
I would say that there is a large number of them in Europe. And they have a common goal and project that they're working on. However, they're not organized into a big club
what
because
is
that
the
would be
common goal?
So the European Nazis, at least, are just part of the broader nationalist movement that's reactionary to the the non-whites, the non-Christian, non-white people who have come into Europe, invited in effectively by the liberals, especially Muslims.
And I would argue that the rise of far right nationalism, whatever you want to call it, is generally a consequence of economics. And I think when people are struggling, for example, here in the United States, due to the economy leaving some people behind,
Mm-hmm.
People want someone to blame. And it is easy to blame
Mm-hmm.
the things that are different.
I don't know. I think it's partially that, but I think it is something real in the sense that I mean, I think it's hard for Americans to see it, but like, these are countries that consist of their people, right? And obviously, this sort of language is
Nation
very foreign to
states.
us. Yeah, right. So in the sense that they are bringing in people that are like if we were to take Germany or something, they
Yeah.
are bringing in people that are non-German, right?
Mm-hmm. A lot.
And yeah, I don't want to sound all fashy to the tired bird or whatever, but
No, it's an important reality to recognize, and of course the
yeah,
left gets on me for this, but it's like, look, how are there all these nationalist movements everywhere if there was no thing for them to point their fucking fingers at, right? Like, they're mad about the fact that a bunch of also nationalists. So that, for instance, Germany, you mentioned Germany, there's a shitload of Turks in Germany. Well, did you know that Turkish nationalism is extremely strong and ubiquitous across the Turkish world? Like, from Kazakhstan to Xinjiang in China to Turkish diaspora in every continent, in every country. Turkish nationalism is a big, big, big fucking problem for white Christianity. Like, the Sunni Turks do want to destroy Christendom. They do. They don't even pretend that they don't. They openly talk about turning Europe Muslim. They openly talk about destroying European society and literally take material steps towards that end on a daily basis right out in front of everybody. For whatever fucking reason, the liberals are in denial about that, but I've literally witnessed this with my own eyes. It's a real thing. Now, should we go full fucking fash on them and put them in programs and stuff? Absolutely not. But what I am saying is that there is a reason that this European nationalism trend is springing up, and it's because the liberals are importing a copious amount of non-Christian Europeans into Christian European society such that it's disturbing and threatening the continuity of that society. What to do about it is a lot more difficult problem to answer. But, you know, whereas we're scared to kind of approach that topic because there has to be an answer, right? Because your policy is either sit back and let them succeed or do something. Well, then when it's like, well, what do we do? Well, now we're on a slippery slope leading towards what everyone thinks is fascism. But in reality, just because we associate Nazis and fascists with thinking about that topic doesn't mean that they have a monopoly on that topic, and that the only ideas regarding the idea of European culture being displaced by Islamic immigrants, it's not like we have just the liberal position and the Nazi position. There's a whole multitude of other alternative ways of looking at that and dealing with that that can't get talked about, because when you bring up that idea, people immediately assume that you're a racist nationalist. All this bullshit. But it's like, look, by us cowering away from those ideas and therefore not producing a meaningful answer, guess who isn't shying away from those ideas, and guess who is coming to conclusions? The fascists. So the stupidest thing we can do is to leave that topic in their hands. We already know what their position is on it, and it's bad. Kind of the same way with militarism in the West. The anti-war community knows nothing about war. Like if you're like, hey anti-war, hey Noam Chomsky, how many aircraft carriers do we have? How many JDAM missiles were purchased in 1999? He has no fucking clue. He doesn't know what a JDAM is. The anti-war, and he's one of the most knowledgeable anti-war voices that exist. The anti-war community knows nothing about warfare. Nothing. The only people who understand warfare are people who are pro-war. So what do we have? A bunch of war and nobody to stop it. Good people cowering away from the difficult topics in politics literally hands it to the worst people. And it's intellectual cowardice is the prime mover of that. I refuse to let that happen. And it's hard. It's fucking hard. Like, confronting these topics is difficult, it's painful, but it has to be done.
So, speaking of the topic of the day, do you explain the Israeli-Arab context conflict through the lens of your political understanding?
You said, can I explain the situation in Ukraine or Israel?
Israel and Palestine, I think, is what we said.
Yeah,
right?
through the lens of your political understanding, it was the topic that is indicated in the chat.
Okay, so in the diplomatic circles of the world, the Israeli-Palestinian crisis is considered to be the single most complicated and intractable of any diplomatic rifts that exist in the world today. So it's that's like the Everest of questions, but I'll do my best. So the beginning of it all is the really complicated part. So I won't start at the beginning. But basically, what's going on right now is that the people in the Middle East who don't want the Europeans to control the Middle East are attacking what they consider to be the vulnerable uses to control the Middle East, and that is basically Israel and America's military bases in all these countries.
You dropped out for a significant portion of that, at least for me.
Oh shit, okay. So right now what's happening in the Middle East is that the people in the Middle East who want Western powers to leave the Middle East, they are attacking what they consider to be the most vulnerable parts of the Western apparatus holding down the Middle East. And to them, what that looks like is Israel and the American military bases. And then also, to a lesser degree, the regional Arab political players who are in bed with the West. So those are the three targets that they have. Those are, the tactics, the approach that they have in combating those things is basically the only way that they can hopefully eject the United States from their part of the world. And not just the United States, but especially France and the UK as well. Well, Israel, in fact, is the Achilles heel of the Western apparatus for Middle Eastern hegemony. So if it wasn't for Israel, the West's ability to hang on to their colonial possessions in the Middle East would be very, very much undercut. So in order for them for their intelligence planners, their war planners, to understand what kind of tactics they would need to develop to fight this, they have to probe and test the resolve of the West. And that's what those missile attacks are. They're trying to understand from a technical standpoint, how can the Iron Dome system be defeated? And once it is defeated, how long does it take for them to get it back up? What are their other tools? When it's defeated, what do they do? So
That's a really good fucking theory. I like that.
hit them where, Israel
You
has
cut
no.
off there,
Oh shit!
like
I'm
for
sorry.
a couple of seconds again. No worries.
What did y'all miss?
I don't know. Just repeat anything you can in the past like 10, 15 seconds.
Yeah. So
Yeah, you just said something about a good theory. I'm sorry I missed it.
So Hamas in Gaza Strip has recently attacked Israel's air defense systems called the Iron Dome. It's a surface-to-air missile system they have. Well,
Yeah.
that hasn't been used in action in a intense way since the Iron Dome has existed. But what has happened is a bunch of articles have been written about how impenetrable and superior the Iron Dome system is, and that it's basically a fortress that can't be penetrated.
Wasn't the Iron Dome in place during the World
Cup? Earlier version of it was. So they have what they call David Sling, and then also Iron Dome, and one of them is an anti-aircraft, and one of them is an anti-ballistic SAM system. But anyway, both of those form the integrated air defense of Israel. Well, that's the primary thing that prevents the resistance, the people who don't like Israel. That's the primary thing preventing them from being able to successfully attack Israel, because they don't know how much of a fortress this Iron Dome and integrated air defense really is. So they tested it. They shot enough missiles at once to where every interceptor missile that was shot by the Iron Dome connected to a target, there was just more enemy missiles coming in than there was defending missiles. And that's called a saturation attack. So
Yeah, they overwhelmed it.
Exactly. So Hamas just overwhelmed the Iron Dome system so that they could determine its limits, and then also the radars that the Iron Dome system uses to track the projectiles it's trying to shoot down has a specific electronic signature that's classified, and that Israel doesn't like turning on their radar unless they absolutely have to, because they don't want the spies around them to record that signal, because their engineers can go and then figure out how to defeat the radars more effectively. They know what the weak spots are.
Oh, okay. So they don't have like radar constantly scanning. Somebody has to like.
Correct.
So I guess somebody sees a missile launch and then turns it on.
Well, there's two different warning radar,
Oh,
which
you
is
cut
a
off there again.
frequency that. Okay. Am I back? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they have two different types of radar. In your typical SAM system, what you have is a bunch of interceptor missile launchers. That's like these tubes that you see or whatever. And then you have a computer system that the radar feeds into. And there's two radars. So there's a tracking radar, which is like your targeting radar, and then a detection radar. So one radar isn't very precise, but it's lower power and can identify that there's something roughly in a given area. Well, as soon as it detects, like for instance, an incoming missile, it automatically turns on the tracking radar, and the tracking radar is what actually guides the surface-to-air missile to the incoming target.
Okay. So
So
the missiles
they're
are.
trying to.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. So the missiles are guided.
No,
They're
you're
not
good.
independent fire and forget.
So the surface-to-air missiles from the Iron Dome are guided to their targets. Correct.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. That kind of has a tendency to overwhelm some computer systems with multiple targets.
It's actually a very accurate system. So unlike other SAMs, the Iron Dome is a hit-to-kill system, which means that the tracking radar is so precise that the interceptor missile can actually make physical contact with the target instead of exploding a fragmentation bomb near the target, which is what most SAMs do.
Uh huh.
So Israeli radar is actually quite advanced. Maybe arguably the only thing more advanced would be the Russian S-400 series, which is it's a different design of a SAM. But anyway, that's getting into the weeds. The point is that the biggest defense that Israel has at all is the Iron Dome and the David Sling, both of which were pushed to their limits, and the tracking radar is turned on. So now Iran and Russia and whoever else in the region, probably Egypt, has a electronic recording, a sample of both the warning and tracking radar of those systems. So now the next time they want to attack Israel, the vast majority of Israel's defenses have already been neutralized. So it was a huge power grab by Hamas. Now the Arab countries that dislike, or the Muslim countries that dislike Israel, now have a hell of a stronger hand to play against Israel than they did before they attacked that surface-to-air missile system.
This
Right,
isn't
but
good.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying this isn't good. Like this has a lot of
No.
bad implications.
Yes.
It's part of the natural arms race between countries. But how long do you think it will take their engineers to implement some kind of a
Weeks.
countermeasure? Oh, you think they can employ something within weeks?
At the most, because you got to understand, they prepared this. They were ready to do it before they pulled the trigger on the missiles, you see.
Oh, okay, that's smart.
So they knew.
All throughout the pandemic, they're just preparing and making these rockets and importing them just to fire them a week ago.
Yeah, exactly.
To the best of my knowledge, most of these rockets are just basic homemade rockets made out of like sewer pipe and whatever they can get. I don't think they're very sophisticated.
Some of them are. So what they do is, and we do the same thing, they're called decoys. So remember how I was saying that they have to be saturated? The saturation, they have to be overwhelmed with a number of projectiles. Since the precision missiles are expensive and difficult to produce, what they'll do is shoot a shitload of unguided Scud missiles left over from the Cold War, and they'll shoot enough of those at once to where that's what overwhelms the system. And then once the system is overwhelmed, they'll send over a couple guided missiles.
So
You may not be taking into account the nuclear deterrent. So what's the plan for dealing with the deterrent?
Well, so that's a little bit more complicated question, because the way that most people understand nuclear war is not how nuclear war actually works in the 21st century. So we're not in the era of big hydrogen bombs and stuff like in the 50s. Nuclear war is actually very, very feasible now, which is a terrible thing. But Israel, while they do have a certain number of nukes, that isn't quite the trump card that it used to be. So, are you familiar with the Russian artillery system called the Grad rocket system or the Smerch rocket launcher?
Yeah, they were small. They were small nukes, right?
Well, it's a shitload of rockets. So picture you had a bunch of cardboard rolls and you bunched them up together, and then you put a rocket in each one of those and you fire them all off at once like those fireworks.
Yeah.
So it's a salvo rocket attack artillery system mounted on the back of a truck. So the thing about those is that even though they're not nuclear, they're also not guided. But since they're all pointed in roughly the same area, all of the rockets are going to land within a relatively short distance from each other. And if they are high explosive rockets, they will effectively destroy a similar area on the ground that a nuke would. So, in strategic context, it might as well be a nuke, even though it's not really. It's easier to use because it isn't a nuclear warhead. They're conventional weapons, but the damage that they do is comparable to nuclear weapons without the radiation.
Okay,
So
I see what you're saying. We have similar things where a cruise missile will deploy hundreds of bomblets and do basically the same thing.
yes, exactly. So now the Arabs are, and not just the Arabs, especially the Iranians, are extremely clever with this stuff. These are not stupid people at all. So when you read anything in the West about, oh, Iran's navy is a bunch of bullshit, all that's bullshit. Okay, if that were true, we would have attacked Iran a long fucking time ago. That is not true. They're scared of Iran. That's what's really going on. That's why they're trying to give Iran money and make deals with it and all this other shit. They're scared of Iran because Iran is a powerful country, not a weak country. And it's important that they tell us the opposite of that because we're the ones who are going to have to go fight the fucking war. It's not going to be these old cuck conservatives in their 50s, you know, pounding hot pockets like it's going out of style or something. It's not their fat ass who's going to go over there and fight the war. It's us. So they have to tell us all this stuff and have us thinking the worst of these people and all that stuff. But realistically, I don't know if y'all have done any research on Iran, but Iran is the least Islamic country that gets called an Islamic extremist country. Like the grip, I know a lot of people from Iran and talk to them regularly. The grip that Islamic extremism has on Iran is proportionately far weaker than any other country in the entire region, including our allies, especially our allies. The Iranian people are extremely kind, generous people who their culture was formed in the pre-Islamic era under the religion called Zoroastrianism. And there's still effectively a Zoroastrian culture with a thin veneer of Shia Islam, which Shia Islam is, in its ethos, largely similar to Zoroastrianism anyway.
Okay, back on subject.
Okay. Sorry, I digress. I'm bad about that.
No, it's fine. I'm learning stuff.
So
just to go back to the question, how do they plan on dealing with the Israeli current?
So what's and see a big? They wouldn't test the Iron Dome unless they had something up their sleeve, right? Did I cut up?
Yeah, but it's okay. We didn't miss anything important. I'm wondering, and again,
It's serious.
Yeah, I've said this before, and I don't mean in the other chat rooms, and I don't mean to wish harm or massive death, but I think the only way that this is going, because this happens every 2 to 3 years, over and over and over again, and the only way this is going to really get resolved once and for all is if the Palestinians finally take it too far. Maybe they use some sort of a weapon of mass destruction, like nerve gas or some shit, mustard gas, and give the Israelis the excuse they need to finally wipe them out. I'm just wondering, I think that's the only way this whole thing is going to get resolved. Is that
almost, except for instead of the Palestinians, the Israelis, because there is no prospect of the opposite of that.
Yeah,
So
no, yeah, the Palestinians will do something. Well, they'll take a step too far, and they'll use some
right.
sort of a weapon of mass destruction, which will push the Israelis over the edge and give them the excuse that they need to finally wipe out the Palestinians.
Well, let's say they did do that. What next? Israel just gets to keep on marching, and it's like, well, so much for Hamas.
No, they just do like they always did. They just retreat back behind their walls, go about their life, because that's all they've ever. I mean, like, I understand that Israel's not innocent in all this. They've done some kind of asshole stuff. They kind of been dicks here and there.
More than kind of asshole. Like literally, they're like doing terrible, terrible things.
No,
like
definitely
inhuman, unspeakable things. Like
like what?
Like killing little kids for fun.
Killing children for fun? How about the Palestinians using children as human shields and constantly attacking Israel?
I'm not going to get into all that stuff. Like, if you want to really look at how the whole thing works, the Israelis are the bad guys. Are the Palestinians perfect? No, but they don't have to be, because they're getting attacked, and they're acting like people who are getting attacked. And even so, regardless of the morality of it, Israel doesn't have the capability of doing that to Palestine and surviving. The entire Muslim world would crush Israel like a bug, which they can and are probably about to do. That's probably what this is.
Who knows? Well, if that's the case, I don't know exactly what Israel's nuclear capabilities are, but
they have about 80 tactical nukes.
Okay, well, that's plenty. I'm confident that if there was a coordinated attack from all the surrounding Arab countries, like they were going to just finally do away with Israel, then Israel's going to go scorched earth and nuke the whole place.
That won't happen.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that, but it won't.
Which is exactly why the Arab countries.
So do you know what would happen if that did happen? The Jews would be exterminated from the face of the earth, is what would happen. Like
another Holocaust.
They would finish what Germany started. That's exactly right. The Jews would cease to exist if they did that.
Well, if they do that, see ya, guys.
Yeah, because they're gonna go down swinging. They're not gonna allow.
It doesn't matter. There may be 20 million Jews in the whole world. There's never been more than that. Their population is consistent around that number.
I think, right now.
Well, there's enough of them in the United States to repopulate, but
what I'm saying is, if you took every Jew in the world and then divided it by every Muslim in the world, there's like 100 times more Muslims than Jews. It's just cannot happen.
So you're saying there'll be a religious war?
Huh?
So you're saying there'll be a religious war where all the Arabs will go after the Jews?
Yeah, not just the Jews. Like the Arabs. It's not just the Arabs. The Muslim world doesn't look at Israel as a Jewish entity, and that's why they hate it. They look at it as a Jewish entity that is an entity created by Western colonial powers, and that's why they hate it. So if Israel didn't have anything to do with France, the United States, and the UK, they would just peacefully coexist with the Israelis like they've done for thousands of years.
No, that's bullshit.
Okay, go look at the Achaemenid Empire and the Ottoman Empire, both of which protected the Jews and the Christian minorities for hundreds of years each.
Yeah, that doesn't mean it's the Western powers that are the problem.
Look, man, I'm not going to go into all that stuff. It is simply a fact that Israel is a product of a colonial project that is directly designed to take away the sovereignty of every single country in the Middle East. That is the truth. And the people in the Middle East understand that, and they don't have any qualms about that. So they are responding in kind.
So at the end of World War II, it was a big conspiracy to fuck over all those people in the Middle East and give Israel to the Jews. That's it?
No. that is the consumer version of it. The reality is that we haven't been out of the Crusades since they sacked Rome in 1453. So, all at the highest level, all Western politics is in a fearful reaction to the event that is Islam. In fact, while we're talking about this, I'm going to look up a video that really contextualizes it.
Okay.
So, from the time Islam started, hold on. When you want to try to find a video, it's never there. Let's see.
Is this from the Islamic, oh, poor me, I'm a victim point of view?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Which I don't subscribe to, by the way. God damn it, where is the video?
Yeah, because Muslims are really good at playing the victim and, saying, oh, we're discriminated against, after they blow up a building and kill 100 innocent people.
Well, and they also like to downplay the fact that they do seek to destroy Christendom and always have.
Well, yeah, sure.
It's like an inseparable aspect of what they're doing. This
Right.
isn't the exact video that I'm looking for, but it suffices, I guess.
Yeah, it just kills me though that after they go on a reign of terror, like through France or some other country with bombings and shootings, and then they take a step back and say, "Why are you picking on me? We're so oppressed. Everybody hates us." They play the victim after they kill innocent people.
Well, Boomer, I don't know if you're just trolling Turkbird or that's an actual opinion, but both of you all appear to be painting with very broad brushes.
No, it's just
okay.
It's just what I've seen over the last 20 years of terrorism.
Well, how old are you, Boomer?
50.
50. Okay, so if you were 80, then your perspective on the situation would be a lot more meaningful. But you were born at a period of time after the crux of the situation had already occurred, and that is missing from.
How old are you, Turkbird?
I'm 35.
But 35.
But I'm not forming my view based on a recent 50-year perspective. So I've put the video link in the description.
That's fine, but I'm just saying I've seen with my own eyes on Al Jazeera and other international media where these people go out and terrorize whichever European country they've chosen that day. And then they claim to be victims and we're being picked on and we're discriminated against. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you're not going to get any sympathy from me after you've just murdered 100 people.
Let's say you start watching the movie Terminator 2, right at the scene where the Arnold Schwarzenegger is having his epic final battle with the T-1000. It would be easy to come to the conclusion that Arnold Schwarzenegger and John Connor and his mom are just pieces of shit, and they're picking on that poor T-1000. Well, that's because you didn't watch the first part of the movie. Context does matter, and any kind of political analysis, the key to political analysis in general is context analysis.
Okay, so you're going to say I need to walk a mile in their shoes to better understand them and why they kill innocent people?
No, I'm saying understand the situation from the actual beginning and therefore be able to understand the parts of the timeline in context.
Okay, look, yeah, I understand. People know the difference between right and wrong. They know what murder is.
Well, hold on, because you've used the word terrorism several times, and it's as if you don't understand the problems associated with the word terrorism.
No.
Okay, so that's called a weasel word, kind of like a lot of other words in politics. It is a word that doesn't confer any specific meaning different from any other terms. It is a term that is a loaded it's an emotionally charged, loaded term that describes a number of factors that already exist and already have words for them.
Oh, wait,
the purpose of the term terrorism is to convict people and actions, not to have an accurate understanding of those actions.
Oh, okay, then what words should I use instead of terrorism for them murdering innocent people?
Well, the reason I bring it up isn't because...
No, please. You want to...
I will.
using the word terrorism.
That's
Tell me what word I should
That's what
use.
I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to correct you to describe their behavior. I'm just pointing out the problems of using the word terrorism in general. For instance, in America, we accept the word terrorism in our political lexicon, but don't understand the liability that that word is with regard to our Constitution and our jurisprudence. Does it say in the Constitution that we all have the right to speak? We have the right of free speech, freedom of the press, or whatever, unless you're a terrorist? It doesn't say that. The word terrorist is not in the Bill of Rights. Well, what is the relationship of the word terrorism with the Bill of Rights? Well, it attacks the Bill of Rights. When we accepted the term terrorism into the American political and legal lexicon, it constituted an attack on the material of our Bill of Rights. So that's just a side note that I was pointing out because I don't think
you're starting to get really academic and off subject here. They're terrorists.
So,
what they do is terrorism, and the word is fitting.
No, they're not. No, they're not. No, they're not. It's not. It's a false taxonomy, and that's a weasel word. And there's no way. Hold on, Boomer. There's no way that you can have. Hold on, Boomer. There's no way that you can have a legitimate discussion about politics while using weasel words. It just doesn't work. Weasel words are for plebes only.
Then please tell me what word I should use to describe the terrorism and the terrorists.
They are not terrorists or terrorism. They are militants who are fighting a political cause for statehood like any and every other state did. Okay, that's not the same thing as they don't like something, so they're going to go kill a few people and get attention and say, I don't like fat feminists, so I'm going to go kill a couple of fat feminists on TV. And see, that's terrorism. Well, whenever you're like rebelling against an illegitimate ruler, like the government that you live in is oppressing your people systemically, and you want to form a new state that is sovereign to your people, and you start attacking that state, that's not terrorism. That's a military action. Terrorism brings the concept into the realm of criminality instead of warfare, but it is in fact an artifact of warfare, not criminality. It's important to acknowledge that difference. Terrorism is not the appropriate term there. And that's not to defend what they're doing. It's just not really terrorism.
So then what is terrorism compared to what they do? What is terrorism again?
Terrorism is when you attack the civilian population in order to bring attention to a political cause. So like the Unabomber, that was terrorism.
Yeah, sure, I'll agree with that.
But he wasn't trying to create a new government. He wasn't trying to defeat the United States and start a new republic.
But Islamic militants going and killing hundreds of French civilians. We're not talking about.
They're at war with France.
Maybe ideologically, but they're
not.
No,
they're literally at war with France.
Oh, okay. So they've officially declared war.
Okay, so now what we're saying is that in order to be legitimately at war in earnest, you have to sign pieces of paper and tell the news about it. Well, newsflash, that's not how war works.
I want to know what is this? Who is it that's declared war against France, and now it's a military operation and not terrorism?
Well, they're in a political struggle for the existence of their society, so it is by definition a war, a real struggle. Both of them. They're in a zero-sum game, dude. That's the whole rationale of the Crusades.
So these people from Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, they're at war with France.
Shows basically the dawn of Islam and the rapid expansion thereof. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I disagree. I think it's bullshit. I believe
Here it is.
It's an
Here's
ideological war. That there's a difference of religions, but what they're doing is terrorism because they're going after civilians.
Well, look, for you to qualify that term is completely superfluous. It doesn't change the nature of what's going on there. It changes the way you describe what's going on there.
You're watering it down and making excuses for them.
No, I'm not. I'm trying to get you to make a specific distinction, and you don't want to make that distinction for whatever reason. Okay, so this second video I've put in there shows the rise of all of the major world religions in the same frame, so you can see them grow next to each other. I strongly suggest you watch that video because that'll make this whole thing make way more sense. the spread of Islam is huger and faster than any other religion. It's the fastest growing, completely destructive. It destroys everything in its sight, and it's expanded to the point where now it's crashing into these other civilizational religions. Well, it's clashing the hardest with Christianity, which has been at war with Islam for hundreds and hundreds of years. So at the highest levels of war, even though France doesn't congressionally declare an act of emergency and they're now on paper at war with the entire religion of Islam, that doesn't mean that France, the civilization France, or more broadly, the post-Roman civilization is at war with Islam itself, that Christianity is at war with Islam. Those are very true things. And they don't have exact, clean, formal organizations, but they don't need them because war doesn't work that way. Capital W war, like World War II, these titled wars, are really just collections of battles. The essence of war is a little bit more complicated than that. But indeed, Rome is at war with Islam, and both of those things are still a thing. Rome is still a thing. Like when America fought Germany, that was a Roman civil war in the context of the Crusades, and the Crusades are looking like they're about to flare up again. That's where a lot of this shit comes from. These dimensions can't be left out of our appraisal of these things.
Well, I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree. I'm sorry. I mean, I get you obviously are much better educated on it than I am, and I'll concede that. But if they attacked a police station, a military barracks, something of more strategic value than restaurants and churches and schools, then I would call it something other than terrorism. But when you're going after civilians and deliberately inflicting panic and terror, I call it terrorism.
Well, what do you call it whenever the United States was carpet bombing civilian targets in Germany?
When did that happen?
They weren't carpet bombing civilians.
Hold on, because
no,
my grandmother's brother was literally one of the pilots, so I know for a fact that they did that because they bombed my neighbor's hometown. It did happen. 80% of the casualties in those air raids were civilian casualties. These are the facts.
I don't mean to be disrespectful to your grandparents or to your family history.
No, like you're simply wrong. The United States carpet bombed the German civilian population in World War II. These are the facts. If you can't handle that, that's one thing, but that's what happened.
They were
yes,
collateral damage. They were bombing strategic targets.
No, they carpet bombed the civilian population of Germany on purpose, and that's not the only time the American military has attacked civilian targets. They are literally a terrorist organization in every sense that you just described. These Arab fighters.
This is why you're defending the Islamic terrorists.
I'm not defending Islamic terrorism. I'm saying that your language, your prosecution is not legitimate.
Right.
Now, are there legitimate prosecutions? Of course,
but that's not what we're talking about. Your defense of it is us bombing civilians.
It's not a defense. It's not a defense.
Yeah,
I'm not defending shit.
Time out. There's a couple of things here. Number one, I think a better point for you, Turdbird, would be dropping the nuke on Nagasaki, which were undoubtedly civilian. That was a long time ago.
I didn't expect anyone to contest that. Look, I don't know why y'all are thinking that America doesn't attack civilian populations.
We've let you talk a lot, and you continue to interrupt other people.
But so like y'all are sitting here trying to act like America doesn't attack the civilian population.
Holy shit, dude, you need to let other people talk in order for there to be...
Y'all need to accept that the state that we live in is evil.
Okay, I'm not going to agree with that statement. But
That's because you're a cuck. You're emotionally attached to the idea that our government has a halo on its head, and it's just not fucking true, man. Wake up.
Oh, no, I agree with you there. I
was agreeing with you. I was telling you a better thing for you to point to was Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where we dropped nuclear weapons on civilian targets.
I agree, but most people disagree with that because they've been told that we had to do that to end the war sooner, and that was the moral thing to do, and not an unspeakable act of repugnance.
No,
Okay.
it was repugnant. It was horrible, but it had to be done because
It
the
did not have to
Japanese-
be done. That was the most shameful hour in American history, and I cannot stand it when anybody tries to act like there's a leg to stand on for our behavior in that. It's
there's
utterly ridiculous.
There's
Okay.
no excuse for it, but we came to realize at the time that the entire country, civilians and military, were going to fight to the very last
Not true.
person.
Not true.
And and they were
We have the
jumping off
discourse.
cliffs and the whole. Okay,
That's
well,
not true.
we
Okay,
debated
here's why that happened.
Debated
Because the
another day. They
Japanese-
weren't going to give up. They weren't going to surrender.
Here's why, okay? Because we had already defeated Japan. There was nothing they could do. They were defeated. Their choice.
We had not
politically-
defeated
Hold on,
Japan, dude.
Hold on,
oh
hold
my
on.
goodness.
Their choice.
No,
was
I'm going to
to
interrupt you
capitulate
if you
to
insist on interrupting
either the
other
Soviets
people.
or the United States. They had a choice of capitulating to either the Soviets or the United States. Okay. We had defeated their navy. We were firebombing their mainland. Their military was destroyed. They were defeated.
And they were
Okay, we did not
fanatical,
want
too.
them to submit to the Soviets. We wanted them to submit to us. So we forced their capitulation to us to prevent them from capitulating to the Soviets.
What
have
sources
the
do you have
discourse
for
on this.
any of that? I mean, that is just
It's not my
flatly-
sources. This is publicly available information. Okay, if you
Where?
want me to go dig through
If
the
it's publicly
archives.
yes, go find source.
Okay, well, I
Because
tell you
that's
what,
really just
I'll bring you
dramatic
those sources in our next conversation. But that's what
retelling
happened.
of history.
We did not
you've
have
just done
to bomb
there.
the Japanese. It was an act of evil. We were trying to scare the Soviets.
What?
Well,
I mean, it says on a report that
Embolden
200,000
and empower
Americans
the
will
Soviets by
lose their
capitulating
lives
to them.
if you guys didn't bomb the Japanese.
Yeah, we were firebombing civilian populations before that. We incinerated entire cities full of civilians.
They were
Regardless.
it was tactical
But they spread
factories.
flyers before bombing them.
Oh, okay.
I mean, even if they
That
don't,
makes
I
it
mean,
okay.
Why
Well, I
haven't
mean,
anybody
it was other
mentioned
civilians.
Korea though? There was dropped more bombs in Korea than by United States and the whole war.
Yeah, we dropped more bombs in Vietnam than that.
yeah, undoubtedly,
plus it's war.
The United States is not.
I mean, the United
Without-
States is in a defensive mode during that
No,
time.
it
I
isn't.
mean, it's
The
not
United
like
States
United
has not
States
been
is
in a
a-
defensive mode since the Civil War. It's been an expansive colonial power since.
Well, I mean, they were attacked
Oh,
first.
no.
Right?
I don't.
Bullshit. You want to call us colonial power?
We are a colonial
I mean, it's
power.
not
I'm
like,
sorry,
I
you
mean,
don't
it's not like
understand.
the United States
What
attacked
colonized?
Japan first.
What have we
Even if
taken
they did,
ever since
The
they have the rights. I
Philippines.
mean,
World War One?
they invaded the
Philippines.
Philippines, a colony of their island, a colony of the United States.
Yes, we took
Had a-
that colony
We
from
invaded.
France.
We invaded and took the Philippines by force.
Yes,
Why is it not the 51st state?
well, because
we don't want them to
Americans are
vote, to be
racist,
fair.
and we didn't.
Oh no,
want
wait.
them.
If we're colonizers, like you say, why isn't it the 51st state? Why isn't Iraq the 52nd state?
Well,
why
because
isn't
now what you're
Vietnam
doing is acting like
Yeah.
to qualify as a colony, it has to be this specific set of behaviors, as if
We're just
the
changing meanings here right now.
yeah, he's trying to act like in order to be it's not really colonialism unless you plant
Oh,
your flag.
because everybody says we're colonists and we take over all
That's
these
'cause
countries
that's true.
and
It
we
is
take all
true.
their
It's a
natural
colonial empire,
resources.
then
You might not understand how
They
it's
can
true,
mine
but that
this
doesn't
island.
mean it's not true.
Well, it's the same way when they colonized Africa. They didn't exactly say this is now. For a long time, they just had a military presence there with
Yeah.
with the country, and it
they
was
also took
considered
their
like
resources.
hmm.
They also took the resources, right? The African colonies.
That's why they were there. The only reason that shit happened.
Yeah, but the United States don't.
Yeah, but the whole
Well,
point
take
is that
resources in their
just
country,
because
in the Philippines.
colonized doesn't mean that you have to say it's definitely like.
There's a wide range of ways that places have been colonized by different colonizers. Colonization is a broad system that has a lot of diversity.
I think that there's more economic. I don't know if you whatever.
Heal
We're
was a
running
very
into a
different
problem
model than
of.
bringing China to heal.
Oh my goodness! If you really, in order to like participate in discussion, you've got to let other people talk without interruption. Okay? You've
Okay.
spent a lot of time talking without being interrupted.
It's
You've
all
got to
right.
let other people talk.
He
without
just comes
being
in here and talks conspiracy theory.
All right, thanks, Fred.
The point I was making I don't even know how we ended up here. I don't know if you would call it colonialism. I think we're past the age of colonialism. I think we're into the age of economic influence. Certainly, the United States has a very wide economic sphere of influence. Obviously, there's the Philippines and Puerto Rico.
It's just soft language. Is all it is.
I mean, language. We're not going to get into it. We're not going to get into a meta dispute about the meaning of words again.
Well,
I'm just not going to go down that road.
Hold on. What if there were two people walking down the street and somebody just walked up and chopped one of their heads off, and then when somebody else explained what happened, they said they kind of had a little disagreement. They got into a little kerfuffle. Well, that's not what happened.
Well, neither is colonialism, because
yes,
colonialism.
It is. Well, what's happening is colonialism, and y'all are sitting here trying to act like it's not happening because it's politically safe for you to believe what you believe, and it's politically unsafe for you to admit that America is a current colonial power. What is so hard about that?
Okay, there's another point about having reasoned discussions with people. It's not useful if you.
Are you afraid of that idea, James?
Oh my goodness!
Are you afraid
interrupting
of the idea that America is a colonial power?
I'm not afraid of.
Does it make you uncomfortable to accept that?
Third bird,
it does not make me
please.
uncomfortable to accept that. It's
Right. Well, y'all are
sitting
here trying to act like this blatant act of colonialism is something other than that. But no, that's what the fuck it is. You might not understand it. That is what it is. You're just wrong.
What colony?
Oh my god.
Please tell me.
There's a book called The Economic Diaries of an Economic Hitman.
Hitman, right.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty interesting book. But that's not colonialism. Colonialism has a meaning to describe what European powers...
No. Yeah. This is the sloppy language I was talking about earlier. That's
you're the only one using sloppy language here.
No, y'all don't know what you're talking about. You're trying to sit here and define a word. I'm talking about the thing the word describes, and it's more broad than the strict definition y'all are using. Period. You're wrong.
No, it's not broad. There's another
No, you are wrong and have no idea what you're talking about. You're talking out of your ass. Please stop.
Damn.
Because you're the only source, right? We can't depend on our history books or Wikipedia or something.
Fuck no.
We just have to depend on you.
Discuss. We're not going to get into another.
Look, if you depend on history books and Wikipedia, you're just not even having a seat at the table. Do you think the people who run the world get their information from history books and fucking Wikipedia?
We're trying to describe things accurately.
Should we only ask you for the definitions, turd bird?
No, what I'm saying is that y'all's definition is too limited to properly understand the full breadth of the thing the word is seeking to describe. So what if I said that bicycle, but you think that a bicycle can only be a Cannondale brand bicycle, and if it's a Huffy, it's not even a bicycle.
Matter what I think is
but what it matters is a bicycle. We commonly understand to be a two-wheeled vehicle, and you're just going to a golf cart.
I read. Oh, hey, this is what a bicycle is.
Turd Bird, I want to give you an opportunity to change my mind. Can you please tell me what areas we've colonized or are currently colonizing?
The Philippines is really an excellent example. Also, Puerto Rico is
no white settlers here.
Both of those were still
for something to be colonized.
Hold on, Lloyd. Okay, so in the Spanish-American War, which Teddy Roosevelt started, on purpose, with the express purpose of stealing Spanish colonial holdings because the Spanish Empire was weak at the time. And Roosevelt knew that the American Navy could defeat the Spanish Navy, and as a prize for that, we would be able to walk away with Spain's prized possessions, including Puerto Rico and the Philippines, both of which we took, and we installed a puppet government in Cuba, which was later overthrown by Fidel Castro. I'm sure we're all familiar with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are probably the most clean, crisp examples of American colonialism because that's the closest to the definition of colonialism that y'all seem to be wanting to entertain. Now,
but you're saying that
besides
America is a colonial empire now, at the current moment.
Yes, they currently are.
How?
In addition to those examples, there are a number of other examples where they used more advanced, more modern forms of colonialism, such that we don't even call them colonialism, but in practice they are. Okay, so the way that we have been doing that is by using puppet governments in order to guarantee access to the natural resources of these different countries
This is just
to
more
American
conspiracy
companies.
theory.
It's called exploitation.
Yeah, okay. So, Fred, have you ever heard of the resource curse? Because it's not a conspiracy theory, it's an actual thing that happens in real life. Maybe you should read a fucking book instead of talking shit.
Okay. I don't care about anything you say.
That's because you're a pencil dick. Why are you even in this conversation?
Dude, why don't you just leave? I mean,
I could ask the same of you.
Me?
He's a troll. He just comes in here and talks conspiracy theory.
You don't even know what a conspiracy.
Yeah. All he does.
Micro dick cuck.
He's that sort of guy that believes.
What the fuck?
Okay, Turd. So I get where you're. I'm gonna have to research the Philippines to see if that's true or not. Current.
Being colonized by white
I know the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, like every year or two, have elections and they vote to stay a protectorate, to become a state.
That's kabuki theater.
Well,
yes, because they are cheating elections.
It's kabuki theater. Those aren't legitimate sovereign processes. That's not real. That's for an American
How can you
audience.
say so? Do you have any proof of?
Hey, Littlefinger, can we stop them?
What about the fact that they're not a fucking state and they want to be a state, but they're not a state? How does that fucking work?
Fertile imagination.
Can we stop the mocking, please?
Okay, so
I'm
that's
just sorry. Yeah, I'm just
theater
sorry.
that we
I'm sorry.
experienced our own election just a little while ago. How about that theater? You're gonna equate it to that?
Hold on, I didn't hear the beginning of what you were saying, Boomer.
You wanna call those countries elections and whatever their politics and their procedures, you want to call that kabuki theater? Are you going to also call the kabuki theater we all experienced recently with our own election?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, officially from 1898, the Spain seized the Philippines to the area which is called Philippines today to United States. But officially, they was granted independence in 1946 from United States.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not a protectorate or anything, a colony or
not at an official level. But at the same time, a lot of people think that whenever Britain left Guatemala, that Guatemala is a sovereign country in its own right, and that's just wrong. It's actually a country that hosts British interest and wouldn't exist outside of the British dossier. It is a current colony of Britain. So is Guadalupe. So is these other places. These are colonial powers of a very high level, and of course they still have a great. Well, Canada is one of the least definitive examples, kind of like Australia, where they actually had a movement against the crown. So that never happened in fucking.
Okay. I mean, isn't the Queen of England still the Queen of Canada?
She is.
I don't think that's.
She's the Queen of the entire Commonwealth. It is. She's the Queen of the entire Commonwealth.
No, she has no say in the politics.
That's bullshit. That's bullshit. She just doesn't have a say in the politics at the face level.
I mean, she doesn't.
Guatemala is not listed as a commonwealth.
But a confusing relationship.
I mean, America is considered the Philippines is considered a. I wouldn't say that
ally.
They're yes, they are an ally. I mean, for example, Germany has like military presence in a lot of countries in Europe, for the sake of their alliance, right?
No, but that's what they say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you consider that like some kind of colonization, that they have like military presence and like get some kind of
if Germany wasn't itself occupied, I would say yes, but Germany is itself occupied by Britain and the United States.
I may be wrong, but I think we pulled all our Navy bases.
Hey, wait, time out. Germany is occupied by Britain and the United States?
Told you.
That's correct.
I told you.
Okay, look at where the military bases are, and then look at a map of Allied forces in Germany in 1945, and you be the judge.
I mean, I'm fully aware these are all some crazy. I've been here long enough to radio a couple times, but it's just.
But all allies have.
No, seriously, look up a map of Germany in 1945 and look at a current map of American and British military bases in Germany, and you'll see a very interesting thing about that.
I would like to ask
Or maybe they just
because Fred, you're an anti-intellectual and you don't want to know any of this stuff. You can just stop talking, dude.
I mean, is Germany not capable of self-determination as a country? Is that
no, they're not.
Can I ask a question?
Why? How? Whatever.
Because they are a subject of the United
Because
States.
Turd Bird says
They were
so.
defeated in war,
I
and
mean,
the United States has
I
been
mean,
holding control of them ever since.
can't it exist like a
I'd like to ask a
mutual
question.
collaboration between these countries?
I'd like
Is
to
that
ask a
Germany was
question.
defeated in war, and they are a colony of the United States.
I'd like to ask a question.
So is
The
Japan.
Republic is not the same country as it was in the Second World War.
Y'all just don't understand how hegemony works.
Yeah, you
We just
I'd
don't
like to ask a
understand.
question.
Well, it's the same case for pretty much all
Oh my
countries in Europe, that they have
Literally,
a
yeah,
collaboration, military collaboration with all the countries. Like we have sometimes American bomber planes landing in Norway, for example, or there was like a huge NATO exercise in Norway last year.
So do you know who Charles de Gaulle is, the general from France?
Yeah.
Charles de Gaulle said that the purpose of NATO is to keep the Russians out, the Germans down, and the Americans in. Now that sure is an interesting thing for Charles de Gaulle to say. Why would he say that? Maybe Turdbird is just a conspiracy theorist, and so is Charles de Gaulle.
Yeah.
I'll admit that.
I think that's probably the case. The latter is true.
Yeah,
Turd Bird
Charles
is a
de Gaulle, he was
conspiracy
a
theorist.
total conspiracy theorist, and I'm
I
just
vote
such
for
a
that
sucker.
one as well.
Or probably because he wants France to be a colonial empire.
Well, he definitely does want France to be a colonial empire, and as such, he understands how colonial empires work because they work in
And
this
probably because he's
principle
afraid that the
called
United States
hegemony.
will replace them.
So if one country has hegemony over another country, regardless of what that country thinks, the people in that country, what they think, or any other factors, if country
This is
A
like a
has
mega
hegemony
poo-poo
over
brain
country B,
conversation.
country B is a colony. The end.
Or probably because
Well,
the
then,
United States won't
fucking
allow
all
France to be a
countries are
colonial
colonies
empire.
to either China,
No.
Russia, or United States, using that definition.
Well, that's close to
I mean,
true,
look at
except
the
for there are a
French
couple of
crisis.
other players you left out. The British and the French are still major players, but yes, otherwise that's
And
correct.
United Kingdom. Yeah, but wouldn't that kind of be? Why does it have to be? You can call it a colonization, but I think the way you define it, I don't think necessarily that's a bad thing. Because if they actually treat or respect our sovereignty,
They
but
don't.
they do in
Yeah.
my country.
They
at
do
least. I
not.
can
They
tell you,
absolutely
Yeah, same
do.
here,
they
same
do.
country.
No, they don't.
Fucking-
They're
for
using
fuck's
you as a
sake, they
human
do.
fucking shield, dude.
Yeah,
Well, what
Yeah,
can you
that
do?
might be
Are you
true,
gonna
but
move? Are you gonna
even if
move
that's
Norway
true,
as a country to
it's
another
in our
place?
best interest.
I mean, we
well,
are
no,
the
but
border. We are the border to Russia. You can never change
piss
that.
off the enemies
Yeah.
of Norway and then hide behind an ocean, which is what we're doing.
Well, what are
Don't
how-
you get
what
it
else?
older than
What
cannon
what?
fodder.
Funk is,
Hey, Turbird,
I just makes it up.
Turbird, what else are we gonna do? We are a place where we are placed. We can never move Norway.
So
It's
if you're
we
from
are
Norway,
in the
here's what I
I mean,
would
it's
say.
we
not
are
like the
we are a
United
bor-
States
we are
should be
we are
there.
a border we are a
If
border
Norway-
country to Russia.
If Norway was gonna
And we are
pay us
we are a
money-
small country. We are a
I know.
small country.
I'm
We
Danish.
we cannot defend ourselves against Russia alone. We
I know.
need allies.
I know, but
So what
if
else
the-
is going to happen?
the UK
And
is
America
not
is
a real
placed
ally.
on an island
What's
by
your
itself.
What's
What
your
else
proposal?
what are you going to
Defend
change?
Norway.
Are you
from
going
the
to
United
move
States.
the
Here's
United
Funk. To answer your question, here's how you defend Norway. Okay, the other Nordic countries, right? So Finland, Sweden, and Denmark at least. But really, because of geography,
So it
it
has
would
to be a big
probably be
country,
smart
right?
to throw Estonia in there too. So the Nordic countries should have their own NATO-like infrastructure that is separate from any other thing. So
That
like
sounds
definitely
good.
not part of NATO, but their own mini NATO, where they don't even fuck with the Germans, they don't fuck with anybody, just the Nordic countries, right? Okay. Now, because of the Scandinavian geography, that is a defensible arrangement. It is. Now, the problem with Russia isn't seeking to attack and defeat the Nordic countries. They're seeking to not get attacked by Germany and especially Britain. Britain is the true enemy of the Russians, and the Russians know that. The British are very, very good at sending other people to go fight their enemies. Extremely fucking good.
Yeah, and their accents are weird.
And what will Russia gain from attacking Germany, for example?
Axis that does
Whatever
not
Turd Bird
involve
makes up.
other countries. And that's what should happen. So the Nordic countries should have their own mini NATO, and then there should be another mini NATO, basically out of the old Yugoslavian states and Poland
Oh yeah, I live in
and
Serbia.
Czechoslovakia and those
You
kinds
don't
of
think
things.
that Russia would like to have like more presence in the Baltic Ocean by taking over Norway, or perhaps like all
no,
the oil well
no.
that we have?
What Russia really
No.
wants is to restore its former borders, which are buttressed with mountains. It's a lot easier to defend mountainous borders than plains borders. And in the time of the Soviet Union and Russian Empire, every border except the Fulda Gap, which is right there around Poland, the North European Plain, they also call it, every other part of the Soviet border was secured in mountainous regions, which are very easy to defend. So that little gap there, basically what we call Poland, that little piece of land, that's the avenue that you attack Russia from. That's the only way Russia can really be attacked.
Poland is pretty big though.
So why wouldn't Russia want Norway again? I mean, the ocean's pretty good defense too, yeah?
Well, Norway doesn't really have that much to offer Russia other than a closer place to attack the UK from, but they have submarines. They don't need...
Like one of the biggest, it's like 10% of the fishery in the whole world, I think, in Norway.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. Russia isn't really, it doesn't blow their skirt up as much as their own
Well, they
sovereignty.
continuously push our borders and fish illegally over our borders all the time. Sounds like they want to fish on our turf.
They're not a big fan of the
fishing in
whole...
another man's lake. Not good, not good.
The Russians are sick of being picked on by the West. They're sick of not being respected. They've been kind of treated as a redheaded stepchild throughout history, and they resent that.
Well, the only thing I know what happens is consistently, many times per year, they send over their what the fuck airplanes, fighter jets. They send the fighter jets over our border and fly towards our oil rigs to test our response.
Well, they're just letting y'all know that they can touch you. That's their way of saying, don't fuck with us.
And when we don't do that with them, why
Yes,
is
you
that?
do.
No, we don't.
Norway might not, but Norway is really just the cheerleader and tag-along sidekick of the big powers in NATO, which definitely do that. So, in fact, this last week, there's been probably at least daily incursions into the Russian airspace, or at least approximate to it, including Crimea, the super sensitive area. We fly bombers and drones and stuff right by Crimea all the time, almost every day in the last couple of months. So, and the tempo that NATO harasses Russian airspace is several times more than the tempo that Russia responds to it.
I'm talking about Crimea. That was annexed, though. It was Ukrainian.
Regardless, what I'm saying is they have a big important military base there, and they don't particularly like it whenever we start flying P-8 Poseidons around their territory to hunt for the submarines that just left the base. They don't like that, and we do that a whole lot, and they don't do that as much as we do it to them. The Russians are clearly in a defensive stance with regard to the whole conflict with the West. It couldn't be more apparent that they're in a defensive stance. The obliviousness of Western civilians is a whole different story, and we get this whole idea of Russian aggression in our head. But you know why the politicians sell the idea of Russian aggression?
Well,
because that's how they hold on to Europe.
I would have never said that that the alliance, if you want to call us that, the Western world, is of course we also do that, like cross the borders and send over spy planes, etc. Right?
Yeah,
I've never
and
said anything like that. But so does they, right? That's how it works.
Well, no, it's not like that. Okay, so you're acting like there's parity there, but you're talking in categorical logic. So what if every single day I went over to your house and then peeked through your blinds and shined a gun with a laser on it on your wife's forehead every single day for years, and then after you're like, man, this dude isn't gonna fucking quit, then you start doing it to my house to give me a taste of my own medicine, then you could say, well, we both do it, so it's the same thing. But it's not the same thing. America is the aggressor, Russia is the defender. That is how it is.
Honestly, I don't care.
So, like, Milos, you said you're from Serbia?
Yeah.
Where about in Serbia?
Where
In
do
the
you-
north or the south?
North.
Is it Miloš or Milos?
Milos.
Miloš.
I'm sorry. So Serbia is being courted by NATO right now, which is a direct affront to Russia. So the fact that NATO has gone so close to Russia is, I mean, it's pretty obvious, dude. I don't know how anybody could look at the expansion of NATO and act like it's in response to Russian aggression. That's just utterly ridiculous. NATO is clearly the aggressive power. The Soviet Union doesn't even exist anymore. NATO is hunting for a mission, and because of that, the European countries are starting to have their own ideas about their own future. Well, America doesn't like that. So the way that we hold Europe from exploring their own future is by using the mechanism that we have to prevent that, which is called NATO and the EU, which is predicated on anti-Russian sentiment in Europe. So the more shit we talk about Russia and the more we depict Russia as an aggressive force, the more it justifies us defending Europe from Russia, thus justifying our occupation of Europe.
Okay, Turdbird, since you brought all that up, explain to me the Russian incursion into Ukraine and Georgia.
Okay, so
you're obviously much more educated on this than we are, so please explain the Russian incursions into those two countries recently.
So remember how I was talking about balkanization earlier? Where when a country is conquered, the victorious country will redraw the borders of the defeated country such that part of the ethnic community is outside of the state. They do that to shoulder that state with an unlimited source of future problems, so that they can intervene with an alibi when they want to. They did it to Germany, they did it to Austria, they did it to the Ottoman Empire, they did it to the Soviet Union. That's where all these post-Soviet states come from. So, in the Cold War era, when we were fighting the Soviet Union, we had a number of different...
Who's the they? Just can you go back? Who's the they?
When the West was fighting the Soviet Union in the Cold War, the West had a number of different leads, so that's like people that they recruited with their intelligence services, these spy rings that they kind of created. Well, those didn't go away when the Soviet Union failed, and they were reutilized after the fact to start up problems. Like there was actually two in Chechnya and Dagestan, and then the Georgia episode. So you asked about Georgia. So there was a president named Saakashvili who was elected in Georgia who wanted to bring Georgia away from the Russian sphere of influence and into the American and British sphere of influence.
When was this?
This was, I think, in 2006 or 7.
Right, yeah, it was recently, but but they were independent from Russia, weren't they?
Well, yes, because when the Soviet Union ended, Georgia became an independent country again.
That's what I thought. Okay, yeah, and Georgia and the Russians wanted to take it back.
Well, they didn't want to take it back. They wanted to prevent it from joining NATO, because they don't want to be encircled by NATO, which is a hostile power to them. So, and another interesting thing about Georgia is that in the Soviet times, Georgia was the most privileged of all of the Soviet republics, and they got special treatment. That was where the Soviets went on vacation. So the budgets in Georgia were very handsome, and the quality of life in Georgia was the highest standard of anywhere in the Soviet Union. So it's kind of ironic that they would go so strongly against Russia in the aftermath. But anyway, so Saakashvili had an explicit goal of joining NATO with Georgia. That's an unacceptable course of events for Russia. Russia is literally willing to go to World War III over NATO getting that close. So Russia's number one thing is to prevent NATO from encircling it and getting too dominant of a position that they could easily attack Russia from. Okay, so in order to prevent that, it's a clause in the NATO membership candidate requirements that you can't have an ongoing civil military fight going in your country if you want to join NATO. So what they do is they go in there and they create a fight, and then they end that fight in a stalemate or in kind of a ceasefire so that the conflict is preserved in a frozen state. And if you look in Germany, or not Germany, I'm sorry, Georgia, there's two little areas. I think one of them's called Asieta, if I'm not mistaken. It's a little occupied territory that the Russian troops are still occupying. There's actually two little areas in Georgia that are still under Russian occupation. If you look in Moldova, which at one time was at risk of joining NATO, they have Transnistria, which is a small little area in Moldova that is occupied by Russians, and thus making Moldova ineligible to join NATO. Same thing with Ukraine. So whenever the thing happened in the Donbass, Crimea was a little different, but in the Donbass, where there's currently a war in Lugansk and Donetsk Oblast, the purpose of that is to create in Ukraine, thus making it ineligible to join NATO. Because from Russia's perspective, the whole point is that they don't want the former Soviet states to fall under the influence of NATO, where they will be used as weapons, particularly vicious weapons, because of the close bond. You know, divorces are painful the closer the people are. So NATO can kind of induce this repeat of Russia divorcing this satellite state, Russia divorcing that satellite state, and it's this ongoing concourse of pain that they can put Russia through for decades. And Russia understands that and doesn't want that to happen. They want to resecure their borders where they can have a sovereign fortress like they've always had, without the British mingling, interfering with their local affairs. And that's really all they want. Now, if we backed up and just let them accomplish that, and then after that they were being aggressive, well, that would be a horse of a different color. That's kind of what we saw to some extent with the Soviets, which was a lot more assertive than modern Russia. But Russia is a pacifist country that only asserts itself militarily in opportunities that get presented by the folly of the West. And the reason that the West presented that folly is because they're so fucking busy trying to induce this painful series of quagmires on Russia's border. Now, Russia is not doing that on our border. Russia is not doing anything like that. Russia has a tiny little military budget. They're doing everything they can to put up a fight. And in fact,
what do you think? What about Cuba? What about putting missiles in Cuba, dude?
So that was the Soviet Union, not Russia.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. And as much as I hate to defend, I hate to agree with Turdbird, but the Cold War was instigated by us, and we did a lot of really shitty things to antagonize the Russians. We scared the living shit out of the Russians by being bullies throughout the whole Cold War, and so it's entirely our fault. So I hate to agree with Turdbird on that issue. That's why the Russians had missiles in Cuba, because we were scaring.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you have missiles in Turkey.
The whole time we could have just not fucked with them, you know? Like, our Navy was so powerful that there was nothing the punk-ass Soviet Navy could do to our mighty, mighty fleet. Do you know how powerful the Navy was in Reagan's era, dude? It was like, it'll give you a boner to really look at our fleet in the 80s.
Yeah, if we hadn't been such assholes to the Russians in World War II, then we would have been allies together. Aside from our different political differences, we could have been allies, but we fucked
Russia still actively lobbies for that. Did you know that Vladimir Putin offered to pay for 2/3 of the project where they want to build a logistics corridor, a transportation and utilities corridor from Siberia, crossing the Bering Strait to Alaska and down to continental United States? So that plan actually was conceived before the American Civil War, and the reason that the Alaska Purchase happened was to promote that, which is an initiative that Russia's had because, like I said before, Russia's been fighting the British since before America even existed. So to them, when they saw the American Republic fighting against the British, they're like, there's our fucking guys! And they've been trying to win us over as friends ever since, literally. Okay, so when I say that America and Russia should be natural allies, Russia understands this more than anybody because they know China is really their big threat. They're going to have to fight China sooner or later, and it's not going to be fun. Well, the United States, which all of a sudden means that that alliance is by default more powerful than the sum of any other or combination of other countries on Earth. So that means that as soon as America befriends Russia, that the PRC bullshit, that's over. The colonial project from France and England, they still too big for their britches, that shit's over. The Russian and American pair could easily regulate on the global security architecture and bring us into the most prosperous free time that humans have yet experienced. And we were very close to that destiny at the end of World War II until President Truman cheated us out of it by starting the Cold War against the Soviets and leading us down a $14 trillion spending hemorrhage that only endangered us. 13 trillion. We spent 13 trillion on the fucking Cold War.
Excuse me, what does this have to do with Israel?
Because they're
Excellent
damn
point.
Jews. No, I don't know. I don't know what it has to do with it. We just
They're
got off
fucking
topic.
Jews.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, this all stems from us disagreeing about
The meaning of terrorism.
Israel and Palestine. We're pretty much diabolically opposed. We have different views, and somehow.
Who do you think would win in a fight?
Between
Batman.
who?
Palestine and Israel.
Probably Israel.
Obviously. This is the Palestine versus Israel channel, right?
Is this a question? I mean, there's no question.
Batman with preparation time, easily.
One of the countries has a modern military, the other glorified
One has Toyotas with firecrackers on the back.
Okay, so you're saying theoretically Israel would win, right?
I mean, Israel could wipe out Palestine at any point it wants to.
I don't think it's very
Do
wide.
you think Goku could beat Israel?
Okay, shut the fuck up for
Dang, that's
No, but no, hear me out.
This is
If
the
the Palestinians got Goku, could they beat Israel?
Yes.
What the fuck is Goku?
Of course.
Like,
Don't worry about it. It's an anime character.
Goku is the most powerful anime character of all time.
Uh,
Nobody can beat
wait,
him.
what about Saitama?
that's cringe.
What about Saitama?
Saitama
better,
could be
right?
Saitama
Bro,
is,
shut up with
kind
your
of-
JoJo head ass profile picture.
Wait, who?
Milos.
Oh, okay.
He has a
Can we get
JoJo
mod in
profile
here to
picture. Look
fucking
at this
beat
guy.
This fucking weeb.
But I'm kind of interested.
Hey, no,
I
Goku could kick your ass in a fight. My
I
dad
don't
is
care who
Goku.
will fucking kick my ass in a
My
fucking
dad
fight.
could beat up your dad.
I don't care. My dad can kick.
Hey, at least
Hey, Junior.
this conversation did
Fucking fight me.
manage
You wanna fight, Screwy Jew man?
manage to get rid of the other troll.
I'm not here
I'm
to fight
fucking
anybody.
6'5". I am 6'5", motherfucker. I could deck your ass.
Fucking lamppost.
Everybody's 6'5" on the internet.
Well, I am in real life.
I am.
So,
Yeah,
what do you
yeah.
want to do about it?
I'm basically
Fucking gigantic.
I'm basically
Yeah,
a Ben
but,
Shapiro, but I have a hot wife and I smoke weed and I bench 250. What do you have on me?
I
Yeah,
bet your wife's ugly.
No, my wife's hot as shit, dude. My wife looks almost like exactly
You're
like
just
Selena
trolling
Gomez.
at this point.
No,
Yeah, this
send
is
some
troll
pics.
channel.
Your wife is not hot, dude.
My
Not a
wife
chance.
is almost an exact replica of Karina Kampf.
I mean, we got rid of one troll and got another one. What the fuck?
She's
I know.
ugly as
Very
fuck.
unfortunate. Very unfortunate.
oh, the past troll was really fucking.
Literally,
boring.
I will debate any of you on this topic.
I like.
I will debate any of you.
Sorry, what topic?
Sure, it didn't happen.
Fucking hentai addict. Holy shit.
Sure, it
Shut
didn't
the fuck
happen.
up.
Oh, what if I am? It's a genuine problem. Don't make fun of it.
I think you should work on that instead of arguing random people on the internet.
Yeah.
That's how he's
Well,
working
I
on
think
it.
you
mean?
guys are wasting my time because you clearly do
Why
not
are
know how to
you
argue
here?
mature topics.
Why
I'm just saying. I don't know.
I shouldn't be. I'm very upset with you guys. I'm trying to educate you guys.
Goku would literally obliterate any
Kick
country
me.
who speaks
Get a
English.
mod to drag me out. Get a goddamn mod. Force me out.
Bipolar
You suppressing motherfuckers. You're suppressing my voice.
He's so oppressed. This is so sad.
I am oppressed, legitimately.
Are you?
This
offended?
is so sad.
Do you need a hug because your daddy didn't
What?
love you?
No.
Well, that's irrelevant to the that's you're strawmanning me. So
I need a source
Not
on
really.
that.
I mean,
Need a source.
Why you're
you need a source?
Yeah.
Alright, my source is
You're
D's.
trolling.
My source is D's.
You're trolling because your daddy doesn't love you.
D's nuts.
Oof.
But
I just hear him crying.
well, how much
After
more
you
time
said
do I have
that.
before I get kicked by a mod? Seriously.
I don't
You guys
know.
need to work on that. I've been talking about Goku and balls for
We're
like
conservatives. We're
at least 5
anti-authoritarian. What
minutes
do you
here.
mean?
He's literally fucking new.
Because we believe in your right to be a jackass.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
will die for your right
Thank
to be
you.
a jackass.
To be a retard.
So,
That too.
why
I
don't we
won't.
all be jackasses?
I won't.
Someone talk about something stupid. Someone mention the dumbest thing on the top of your head.
I'd let you get killed.
Is femboy a slur?
You let me get killed?
Yeah.
So like,
yeah,
if you saw
sorry
me
about that,
hanging
bro.
and somebody had like the exact same voice as me and was 6'5", just like me, you'd let him drop?
Of the fastest runners, should they be allowed to compete in normal Olympics? I would say personally, yes. Of course.
Wait, I just answered this question. I don't think so.
You answered the question, but I do have a different opinion. False. Hello?
Okay, so then I should cut off my legs from the knee below, so that way I can get the wonderful
Don't
new
be silly.
fucking.
Don't be
Wait,
silly.
why? Wait, no, this isn't silly. This
Yeah,
isn't silly.
probably Tim said if.
Wait, no.
If.
Ella, I love you. Being an
I
Olympic
love you
gold
too,
medalist.
but I
Being
listened
an
to
Olympic
the
gold medalist.
conversation.
Being an Olympic gold medalist is not just like a silly thing. This is something that people literally spend this is their life goal. And so if you tell somebody that, hey, I know you run almost winning fucking numbers right now, but I'll chop off your fucking legs from your knee, from just below your knee, and now
Who
you'll
said
win
that?
if I do that.
But who said that?
Wait,
This is absolutely ridiculous.
No, this is
He
not
said
absolutely
if there is a person who runs the junior championship, junior world championship, and he's in a range, in winning. So, and then he progresses in age, and then he runs as fast as the Olympic champions. The normal people exclamation mark, whatever that is, right? We know what it is, but what it means, but well, and he would have the chance to win. Would I say personally, is he allowed to? If I would sit in Olympic Commission, yes, I would.
Tim, before this, did I actually answer your question? I feel like I was trying really hard to directly answer your question.
Yeah, I think the problem that you have is that you're applying a standard based, you're applying a general standard that conflicts with all the other standards we have, right? So, for example, let's say I'm a runner at a high school meet. This is a real life thing. I am not a natural runner. Like I was a fucking killer defensive lineman. I would take any of you guys in a fight, but running, I am a little bit below average, okay? I am not a fast guy. Now, if I was in high school, I don't have asthma, right? And I just, took a hit from an inhaler before running. Is that okay? You're going to say, no, it's not okay, but the reason why it's not okay is because it's an unnatural advantage. But your whole rationale here is about not putting yourself in an advantage where it's beyond the scale, right? And it clearly is only a little bit of catch-up.
Tim, I'm going to say it's okay.
Then that's dumb. Okay, then your position's just dumb.
Wait, awesome. Walk me through how.
Wait, how strong do you think inhalers are?
I mean, it's not like
inhalers
no
are
one's
extremely
suggesting
weak.
it's a sonic
I think
boost.
all of us agree inhalers are extremely weak steroids.
Guy takes a puff of his inhaler and he's like on bath salts, just fucking. You know,
It is
running the
because
fuck
when
down
you're
the track like it's some like,
Let's
go!
Sorry,
Let's fucking
no
go!
one's suggesting it's a sonic boost, but generally speaking, when you're doing like a 400-meter run, the difference in time between how long it took the fastest guy and the average guy is about 3 or 4 or 5%. Like it's single digits in the percentage, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, if me doing that only gives me 1.5%, like I'm sorry, at the end of the day, it makes me 1.5% faster. That's not much, but in a race, that's a fuck ton. What?
It's a steroid.
Yeah, first
And
of
it
all, if you
opens,
take
it opens up your lungs. Oh
wait.
my gosh! No, let me
Yes.
just fucking explain before you wait.
It opens
Come
up
on.
the lungs.
He asked a
Yes.
direct question. Like it opens up your lungs, so you're able to breathe better. If you didn't know this, you breathe so that your legs can. Jeez.
Unless you cough,
Everybody
your
understood
ass
that.
off, and you can't even, you miss the shot.
Ella, could you stop, please?
So does an inhaler make you breathe better than someone that doesn't have asthma?
If you don't have asthma and you use it, you will breathe better than if you did not.
Then you know what? Everybody should have an inhaler. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Like, if you're saying like just people with asthma can't compete in sports anymore, I got nothing.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That
I
wasn't the
thought it was
point.
pretty clear on this. I said I do not
You
have
were.
asthma, right? I don't have a prescription for this. But if I just use this, is that fine? Right? So you're talking about something different.
No, if you do not
if you're not
have
ready.
medically diagnosed asthma, it's probably an unfair advantage at that point because you don't have any medical justification for it other than athletic performance.
Just out of curiosity on that. So if I'm medically diagnosed with gender dysphoria, do I have a medical reason to take testosterone?
Yeah, you're probably transitioning.
Yeah. So
I
should I be able to compete in those sports?
I don't know. It seems like the process of transitioning has an effect on athletic performance, which is why this is a topic of conversation. But nothing's stopping you from transitioning.
Wait, hold on. Truly, you can still
So just
compete.
taking an inhaled steroid.
You can still
Yeah,
compete,
but
but
the point we're
as
both
a male to
making-
female, you compete in the sex you were born with.
So
transitioning.
Wait.
That's
No.
not right.
Really quick. Tim.
It's not a statement of fact. He was talking about what it should be, right?
Awesome. Tim. Yep. Tim. So everyone should compete in the sex they're born as.
No, that's not what I said. Don't change it.
All right. Clarify it for me, please.
If you're born a male and you transition, then you compete as a male.
What if you're female?
All right, but if you're born a female, you still compete.
Yeah, different whole category. I'm sorry. Did I get the? Yeah. So if you're born a female and you transition, wait, did I get this category? No, I did get this right. Yeah. If you're born as a female and you transition to be a male, yeah, I don't know. I guess compete as a male.
Wait, can you compete as a female though? Because female to male,
No,
still
that
have
wouldn't
to
be fair.
compete in female.
So the whole point is it fair? And like, there's very clear lines we can look at that give an unfair advantage.
Is it fair for male to female to compete in female sports?
Not necessarily.
No, it's not.
All right, so why?
Because it gives an unfair advantage. Did we not just have this conversation?
I know.
Have we not been talking about this?
I'm just supporting his beard. I can mention it.
All right, Kara. We've been oh fucking hell. No, we've been talking about the last fucking chill, stop. I fucked up. Stop it. So
You just call
what's
Tim
next?
Kirill.
no, stop it. No, everyone, I swear to God.
Called tequila. Wink.
We're on to you.
Why is it okay?
My position hasn't changed.
I know,
It's
and
an
I'm
unnatural,
still
unfair
trying to
advantage.
understand.
It's an
Unnatural,
unnatural,
unfair.
unfair advantage.
Wait, but that's the key though. Unfair. So we were just talking about like female.
Wait, no,
to male.
unnatural.
No, it's not.
No,
Wait, actually, I got
unnatural
natural.
is the key.
Yeah.
It's not. No, it's both. It's not one or the other. It's two prongs, right? So yeah, I have a natural advantage because I'm, the guy who has the world record in javelin, the furthest anyone's ever thrown. He's 6'6", not a fucking coincidence. Pretty much everyone that throws javelin and wins records, they're either 6 foot or above, or they're just a hair under, like 5'11", 5'10", right? These aren't average sized people. It's bigger people that kill it at the javelin.
Yep.
That's that is a natural advantage, and it is a little unfair, right? Because someone who's 5'2" is not going to be able to ever compete like that.
No, but if everyone is 6 foot something, then it is fair. And
right,
as
but
you
they're
said,
not.
there are
I think I would
Wait,
call
wait.
Truly's
No,
bluff
really
and
quickly.
say that we should actually run that experiment. We should allow people who want to increase their height to compete, because I'm pretty certain anyone who goes through that surgery still is not going to be good enough to qualify for like the Olympics.
Tim, I like your point. I just don't think you. The fuck. I want to clarify your point.
Wait,
because I don't think you care. I don't think you care about unfair. It's unnatural. It's
I care
literally
about
the
it when it's
entire
both.
argument.
I care about it when it's both.
But that's the
So
problem.
wait. So I'm gonna walk through a couple examples of like natural unfair advantages. So Michael Phelps has extended webbing.
I'm sorry, you're fundamentally misunderstanding this, man. It's both. It's not. I don't know how many times I can say this because you're trying to give an example where you're isolating either unfair or unnatural. I'm saying it's where the two meet. If it's just unnatural, I don't care. If it's just unfair, I don't care.
All right. So what if it's unnatural, but it put you at directly the same level as everyone else?
If it's unnatural, or if it's unnatural and unfair, then no. No,
Well,
we're just saying there.
it wouldn't be and unfair there. It would be
It's still
unnatural,
freaking-
but not unfair. I'm
Are
putting
guys
you at
still
the
freaking-
average.
Are you guys still freaking talking about Olympic trans?
Yep.
You can go to another chat if you don't want to talk about it, man. Like this.
I don't think we can.
I think
Go to another chat.
Yeah.
There is none.
So
I don't want to join this.
Awesome. Start a new one in politics too. I believe in you. So really, like I'm just curious, like I get the unnatural point. I can follow through with that, but unnatural and unfair. So like somebody who is fucking naturally has an unfair advantage. Where do we put that?
One who has a natural unfair advantage. So, for example, if someone's 6'6" and they're doing the javelin, that's fine.
6'11". All right, awesome. Someone who is someone who is naturally has low T, but is given testosterone.
No T.
Generally speaking, I think that's a no-go. Right. The only exception I would make is short-term stuff. Right.
So
like, if for
medically,
example,
I'm not even talking about transitioning. I'm talking about a dude who's diagnosed with low testosterone. Is it okay for him to take testosterone supplements?
Yeah, I don't think so.
But
Not
that's
in
a
Olympics.
problem. That's a problem with your premise because
Wait,
it's
why?
not necessarily unfair.
That they testosterone?
No,
Wait. If you're diagnosed with low T to take testosterone, no, it's not unfair. The goal of the medicine is to get you into average range of testosterone.
Yeah,
Right,
he
but
can
then-
do
but
whatever
then-
he
Right, but
needs to do.
Right, but then at
This is
that
the thing,
point,
is, like, we could play this out again in the sense that if a low T person was diagnosed with low T and they were given testosterone therapy, realistically, this would play out in a way where they're still not going to qualify or be in like the top 5% of elite athletes. Like these people are already skewed to the far right of the distribution.
Wait, no,
So-
nope, not
Yeah, that's-
now.
yep.
No. Now you're
exactly how
not.
that
Now you're not arguing as to whether or not they should qualify. You're saying that they just most likely won't be there. That argument means absolutely nothing.
Certainly not.
If they do not
Yeah.
qualify,
The argument as to whether or not they will be there means absolutely nothing, because I would make the same. I would make the same argument for trans people, because trans men men transitioning to female are making a minute aspect of actual fucking female athletes. So like as to whether or not they would actually be there means nothing. I want you to tell me whether or not you would be okay with whether or not you would be okay
He's
with
upset.
no, I promise you I'm not.
Come on.
I promise you I'm not. Whether or not you would be okay with the idea of a man who has low T taking testosterone supplements and being a part of the Olympic Games.
Sure, man, because I wouldn't be concerned about that. I'm not concerned about the
You're okay with
outcome of that sliver of people.
I don't think
because
wait.
a low T man taking testosterone therapy. I mean, the idea that we're going to equate that to a man transitioning to a woman is just simply. I mean, these are two different things. These are very distinct, different things.
Wait. Okay, so this is the problem. Is there was two...
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I would be okay with that.
So
my only issue, just so I can be clear about my perspective, is whether or not there's a disproportionate outcome of trans athletes that therefore, are breaking the mold in terms of why there's a gender distinction in athletics to begin with. And if that isn't the case, I'm okay with it. But yeah, we need to have regulations for these things. And unfortunately, the regulations when it comes to many different athletic foundations and specifically when we're talking about the Olympics deals with hormonal therapy.
Very awesome.
This was not a barrier to put in front of trans people. This existed before then. And so this is why there's such a intersection, why this becomes so difficult. Is this a discrimination or is this just a athletic regulatory rule that does affect athletic performance?
Tim, I know you want to
agree
talk.
on that?
I really quickly am going to let you talk. I just really quickly want to point towards the fact that no trans athlete has ever won a gold medal, and you're talking about the actual outcomes there. So I'm sorry, that's not a winning argument.
No.
Tim,
That's not true.
Say?
I'm trying to give you my.
What you're saying there is not true.
And how many trans
Olympic athletes have there been? The argument that he just made was the actual outcomes, which that there isn't any. For Olympic athletes.
I don't know
for
the
Olympic
number of trans athletes that are in the Olympics.
Awesome.
Yeah,
none. Zero. There's been 0 trans gold medalists.
How many trans people have been in the Olympics? That's what I want to know. All right, do we have a rough estimate of when we started to identify that?
Oh shit. Well, we started to identify it in 2008.
Which one is this year, man? This is silly.
2008, and we still haven't had the rampant fucking male to female transition.
We started in 2008. My question was, how many trans athletes were in the Olympics?
Not many. No.
I think it's 0. So it's a really bad standard to use, truly, because while the Olympic Committee may set a standard, that doesn't mean that the other countries don't get any say. Other countries get a say. I just tell you right now, I guarantee you, Russia's not allowing a trans athlete. Period. End of story. Right? And there's also other issues about the Olympic Committee. Hold on, dude. Hold the fuck on. There's so many. From all the qualified, how many of them are allowed to do it? How many are even trying to do it? There's so much going on here. Just saying, I'm going to stick to this standard, that it's got to be Olympic gold medals is silly. We see this through high school sports, and that's not even responding to you. Why are you fucking saying it's not what you said?
Okay,
I'm not characterizing what you said. I'm characterizing what someone else said.
Okay,
dude.
Continue on.
It's so fucking stupid, man. Not everything's about you. Fucking Christ.
Gosh, Tim. You need a holiday.
So
now all of you can fuck off too.
Yeah, everyone fuck off, please. No, this is really silly, truly. You're insisting that we look at only Olympic medals when this is the first fucking year that someone's actually, qualified. And there's all these other reasons why they may not have actually entered, and we don't know what those are, right? We don't actually know for a fact, and so you're setting an artificially high standard. We can look, if you want to do that route, look at high school sports, right? Where Connecticut, all the girls' medals were won by trans athletes, right? In 2019. Every single one, right?
Oh, shit.
So, yeah, cool. Look at that. But what I really want to ask you here is if you're talking about, catch up, right? Someone is born short. Like, we know, okay, I have, let's say, I have a kid, and we know that he's got some kind of deficiency where he's not going to get as much growth hormones naturally as he should, right? Okay, so then we know, I'm making these up, let's say in high school, the average height for a starting basketball player is 6'1". In college, is 6'5". In the NBA, it's 6'9". So, my child is my child is in middle school, and we're looking at getting growth hormones to make them taller.
Mhm.
Which barometer do we use? 'Cause by your standard there, if we say, hey, well, the average NBA player is going to be 6'9", so it's fine if I give my kids growth hormones to the point where he's 6'9"?
Nope. The average by that level.
Okay, so you're suggesting that so you're saying that anyone that has this would not be able to compete after high school, practically. Because if you say, you're not going to have, artificial growth hormones given to kids when they're 23 years old, dude, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is not a thing. Your growth period stops at a certain point. And so you're setting a standard where it's only for that period, but this is something where obviously this is going on over an extended period. Like, growth spurts with height. This isn't like, a one and done thing like that. I'm sorry. Yeah. But it's done at a certain age, usually around 17 or 18. And so if the kid wants to compete, you're saying only give him enough to where he can compete at this level, then after that, he's fucked, right? That would be like saying, just for example here, hey, it's okay for a trans, a female to male trans person, it's only okay for them to have as much testosterone as your average high school male. We're not going to compare them to your high school male athlete. We're not going to compare them to your college male athlete. Do you see the problem here? You're setting a standard here that like caps at one point, and you're not allowing it to go any further.
Yep. In high school, I can agree with you, and I can also agree that my standard disadvantages trans people. I'm all right with making that argument. Mostly because
No. You have different standards when it comes to whether we're talking about fixing height or sex.
Wait, no, I have roughly the same standard for both.
No, because one naturally is you're allowing the shift. The other one really practically you can't.
Tim, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, if I could naturally inject something into you, or if I could inject something into you that over the next fucking 2 years you would grow 4 inches, versus I could inject something into you that over the next 2 years you become the gender you identify as, like I'm probably going to be roughly okay with both of those.
Yeah, so I don't know. I feel like there's no way, realistically, to actually apply this consistently and fairly. The most fair thing to do is simply say if it's an unnatural and unfair advantage, then it's not allowed.
Tim,
I think the people in the Olympic Commission, they have such a hard time to discuss the same subject.
Okay.
Because they're the one who have to decide in the end.
So I'm gonna make one
Let
point.
Spartan go. Spartan's been waiting patiently.
I'm a patient man, Tim. So our criteria is unnatural and unfair, right?
Yes.
It has to meet both of those criteria in order to be wrong.
Correct.
So, like we said earlier, if a man was diagnosed with low T and unnaturally took testosterone to bring him up into the average natural range, how is that advantageous?
Advantageous? It's a boost over where he is naturally. Yeah.
So it is just like a natural thing.
Right.
It's not just.
So wait, I agree.
Because it wouldn't be unfair, it would just be unnatural.
Exactly. So it's not unfair. So you'd be okay with someone, a male, that is diagnosed with low T, to take testosterone to boost his testosterone levels up to the average to compete in sport. Because it's not unfair, he's in the average.
No, I don't think it's that's not really fair because like you have to look at how that's going to be compared. Hold on, dude. You're only looking at it. How is it compared to the average person, right?
Correct.
We have a gradient, right? So it may be I think it's nanomoles is the term they use. Someone that has a low T, they may have 2 nanomoles. The average is like 7.8. The gradient may be from on the low end. Someone who has like 6 would be considered normal, but on the high end before you get something that's completely
Wait.
unnormal. Maybe, hold on, it's actually in the higher 20s where it may be considered normal, right? So what is actually the normal amount? And if you're saying, hey, this guy's low, so he's going to be bumped. I'm sorry, you wanted to cut in?
No, I'm saying you said simultaneously that 7.5 was the average, but 6 was normal.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's.
Do you understand what a normal range is, Spartan? Average and normal, like oh Jesus, a range is going to be one figure to another figure. An average won't be X to Y. An average is a set amount, right?
Wait, are you saying median, or are you meaning average?
No.
Wait, no. Average. Awesome. Can we do this really easily? Really easily. I'm going to use 2 numbers. Let's say the average test for a man is between 9 and 11. Right?
Yeah.
That's not what you say for an average. The average would just be 10.
Yep, the average would actually be 10. The average range would be between 9 and 11.
Right, but average range is not the term used. It's
okay,
range.
Oh my god, I'm sorry. So I'm trying to walk through
I'm
this.
sorry, you guys look this up. Look up the average range. That's not the terms we use.
It's fine. I'm trying to just walk through the idea without like actually looking at like the numbers because I have no idea what the average fucking test range is for an average man. But awesome. So we're gonna see the average range is between 9 and 11, right? And you have somebody who is getting bumped up.
Stop using the term average range. That's just adding confusion. People are getting confused over the terms normal range and average. Please,
Normal range.
Ella.
All right. Normal range. Normal range.
Okay.
Normal range. Normal range. Normal range of individuals is between 9 and 11. People are getting bumped up to 9. Is that wrong?
What's the framing of the conversation?
I think that is not wrong.
Wait. I just don't understand how, like, if you bump someone who has low T up to a normal human's level of like testosterone, how are you calling that unfair?
All right, so I can run through this very quickly, right? So, again, I think now that we understand what an average is, normal range from what I saw earlier for men is between 6 and 29, I think it was, nanomoles. These terms are new to me. It's just what I saw there. That's normal, right? So you have 25, your doctor's gonna be like, "Holy shit, that's off the charts." It's like, no, okay, that's in the typical range. It's not a shocker, right? But it's between 6 and 29. Holy fuck! If it's between 6 and 29, that's in the normal range. The average is 7.8, right? So it tends down towards the bottom, right? Now, if you're saying, hey, we want to give someone who has, only 3 nanomoles of testosterone in their blood enough so that they're in the average range. Okay, does that mean like you can bump them up to 25 because that's in the normal range? Spartan, like the actual question. Spartan, it's a question for Spartan. Ella, your name's not Spartan, please.
So for instance, you're gonna kind of like, when it comes to taking testosterone, your levels are going to not necessarily be consistent the whole time. But no, I would say that like artificially making it at the end of the spectrum probably would be taking advantage of, I would say, some form of charity. So, but if someone was around like, again, 9, maybe 10, or maybe a little above the average, because like I said, they're going to fluctuate because they're taking medication, fine, I have no problem with that. That's not an unfair advantage.
So you're saying it's not unfair to take someone who has a lower than normal amount, like let's say it's like 2 nanomoles, and bring them up to the average, about 7.8, or a little bit above the average, but not higher, even if it's within normal range.
Well, the question is, wait. Here's the thing: when it comes to that, it really depends on how much charity you're willing to give. Like, if I don't even know if there's like a consistent answer on this, because someone could rationally say, like, if you're on the upper end of like 15, 16, 20, whatever, hey, you're still in that range. You know what? Fine. Right. I don't really know. I mean, it really depends on, well, first of all, there's certain sports might be different. Like weightlifters are probably going to have a higher range. So if you're trying to be a weightlifter, giving them a little bit more charity and say, all right, you're at 15, 16, considering what you're competing in, kind of makes sense. But at the same time, I don't necessarily know if there's a clear answer on this, but I think, relatively speaking, it's not a disqualifier. It's not just you're completely out of your mind. It's unfair. I don't know how you're making that leap.
Well, I mean, this was a short, simple question. I don't know
I do
how
have
you,
a question
you went
to
into
that.
that. Please, Ella, hold on. Like, the point here is then what happens, okay? So you have the normal range of 6 to 29. You say, okay, if you have low T, you can take a supplement so that you're now in the normal range and it's fair to compete.
Mhm.
All right. So we have someone who's within the normal range, naturally, a 6.5, right?
Sure.
They're not allowed to take a supplement, but the guy who had low T take a supplement, so he's now at 10 nanomoles, right?
Well, wait.
So now
hold
that
on.
guy has more than someone else who's not allowed to take a supplement. Do you see the problem here? This inherently becomes unfair.
Do you think someone that's like 6.5 compared to someone who's 10 can still be competitive?
Yeah, it's possible it can be competitive, sure.
All right. Like we already made this distinction earlier that you can have lower testosterone than somebody else, but you can still be competitive. There's a lot of other testosterone doesn't dictate.
So what? Like this, you're arguing against something no one's saying, dude.
Then I don't.
The point is whether it's fair, right? It's not whether it's possible to compete, right? If someone, hold on. If I'm 6 foot, and this guy I'm playing basketball with is 6'5", it's possible for me to compete with him. I've seen people half a foot or more than half a foot shorter actually own other people, right? It's definitely possible to compete, but it's a fuck ton harder, isn't it?
Sure.
I have some questions to that, Tim.
So one
Can I
second.
talk, Tim?
Hold on.
Ella has been
wait
waiting.
again?
Truly, hold your
Alright,
thought. Truly,
I'll
write
wait,
it down.
I'll wait.
Ella has been waiting for as long as I've been in this chat.
Go on.
Okay, so Tim, what you just said, the example, I think that is not fair if a natural guy has lower testosterone and competes than someone who had given a testosterone shot. But I want to know, do those people have testosterone shots all the time, or is it just one shot? And if they have more shots, that Olympic player would have given a testosterone shot just before running, for example, does he has an extra boost? And how many hours before?
So I don't know. I don't think it matters whether you do it regularly or. Can I explain the answer? Like Jesus, like do you know? I'm sorry, Ella. Do you know what I said doesn't matter? Like you only finished that clause, so you know what I was referring to.
You just said you don't know.
No. Okay.
That's
so I don't know. It doesn't matter. Fantastic. That's really helpful, Ella. Okay.
That's what you said. So that's all.
I have no more to say on that, Ella. I have no interest.
Okay.
Thank
Good. Good.
Truly, did you want to say something?
Yeah, truly. Do you remember your point?
Yeah, I love to.
Well.
All
right, fine. Wait.
If I may actually talk in defense
No,
of
no,
what
you may
I'm
not.
saying.
You may not. No, you may not.
What's wrong with you, Truly?
I'm trying to make that fucking point.
Truly is cool.
It's great that you
It's
can
not
make your
truly
point,
here.
but you don't own the whole room. I'm sorry to tell you.
I'm so aware.
Be
but
surprised what I do.
That's fine.
It's quite fair. It's quite fair. Truly, you want to
Truly
talk
just
about
made a
politics too?
joke.
Yes.
What are you talking about? No.
Yeah, they were kind of. That was
Gay?
very weird.
They want to argue with themselves, so that's fine. We can continue.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a personal group chat.
Sure. When we look at the testosterone specifically, that we know as a chemical base within our body that can enact certain types of responses within our muscle systems to actually commit this type of quote unquote boost, as Ella just explained. That's the reason why the Olympics look so highly to try and regulate testosterone in a particular way, mainly due to the idea that people can actually boost themselves in sort of drug type manners that is really high. It's hard to detect most of the time. So they have to detect, the only way they are to try and regulate this the best way they possibly can is to detect how much testosterone is in the body. That makes it a lot easier for them to tell whether or not somebody is using drugs that might be boosting them in a particular way that might be unfair for the other athletes.
So that basically means you can shoot someone testosterone a month beforehand. It's still detectable.
It could still be detectable, yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's all what I wanted to know. If Tim knows that, and he said, I don't know, and that's all what I wanted to know. If he knows,
I'm pretty sure he knew.
why didn't he say so?
He wanted to. There was more of a focus on like fairness between him and Truly.
Yeah, but that had a lot to do with fairness. You have to take every itsy bitsy tiny factor in if you want to talk about that subject. You can't just broadband some subject like that and say it's unfair or it's fair.
That's true. That's understandable. The other thing that that was mentioned that Mr. Novak or whatever his name is on this Discord is he had asked a question specifically about the like, is there any transgender athletes in the Olympics? And there is. We know that there are, as of right now, close to possibly a dozen transgender athletes. We know that one in the United States has been accepted. There's one going through the approval phase over in New Zealand. The approval phase, and I think there was one that was accepted over in. No, two have been accepted in the United States.
Do they look good? Like, are they hot?
One's name is Chris Mosier, and the other one is Megan. No, yeah, Megan Youngren.
My biggest question is, why is it always I understand like all the arguments and everything, and the debate's always gonna keep going or whatever, but why is it always fascists and QAnoners that are like not letting the trans people play sports? Like, why is it always those groups of people? You know?
Which groups of people?
The fascists and QAnoners.
Okay, I'm not. I think they just kind of. It's not so much that it's them. It's just that it helps. It more like coalesces with their arguments of what they advocate for. So they just kind of like latched on to the movement because the complex issue is the protection on women's sports, but the inclusion of trans athletes. Because when you're trying to include trans athletes, the scare or the issue is the possible push out of biological women out of these particular arenas.
And how did you relate that to QAnon?
I said that they latch onto it because it fits their narrative.
Oh, okay.
So it's not necessarily that they made this; they just latched onto it.
Huh.
Yeah, I
that
mean, I
makes
think they
sense.
just seek control and don't like trans people.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, there have been many other high profile figures that have spoken out against the actual inclusion without possible additional research. One of which was over in the New Zealand weightlifting. If you probably remember her, to remember, see if I can remember her name. Hello. She retired, but had been trying to speak out against the inclusion of trans athletes in the women's sector for weightlifting, but has been told consecutively within the weightlifting arena to basically shut up.
You talking about Laura Hubbard?
Yeah, Hubbard.
Yeah.
It's wild.
And
What do the
it's not
incels
just
think?
her, but you have other figures within their own sport where they speak out against the inclusion of these trans athletes because they feel like it's unfair.
What do incels think about the transgender movement? Do they like it or do they not like it?
I don't think I really care about what they say.
what do they think? I don't know. The only incels I know, like they're attracted to trans people, so maybe they're biased.
Maybe.
But I don't know any that
I
dislike
wish First
them.
Amendment was in here so I could ask them.
They might just say something about them being degenerates or something.
I don't think First Amendment would call them degenerates.
I don't know anything about this specific person. I just mean like incels. That's what I meant.
Oh, okay.
I don't know who that is.
There was also like a recent research study that was done. I think it was sometime last year. about the situation where there was a letter that was sent to the Olympics with additional study information stating that when it comes to those that are going through the transition period, they still have an unfair advantage over their female counterparts, and request that they might have to include. They might have to tell their trans athletes to go through their transition hormonal period for an additional year before they could be accepted.
Interesting.
And they took this study from
And the year is it's like kind of arbitrary.